Shalom. So, I think we are live. I am actually leaving this more than a little bit vague because I don't know what I'm doing. And I think we need to have a conversation about that. I was reading this book, and I finished it, Counter Woke Graph, which was written by a pseudonymous professor, Charles Pincourt, and is published by James Lindsay. And one thing that I have noticed is we don't know what we're doing and where we're going. A lot of the conversations we've been having lately, including the conversations, for example, Pajot had with Brett Weinstein, various things Lindsay has been saying, this corner of the internet, just introducing people to this corner of the internet. It's not, we're not very well defined in what we are trying to do and what we are accomplishing. I wanted to read the conclusion from this book as kind of an introduction to this. When I began this project, I thought it would be faster to get to this stage, the stage of having a manual against wokecraft. Despite it taking longer than I imagined, I've covered the topics I intended to cover when I started. I plan to update the manual, hopefully with input from woke dissidents who read it and find it useful over time. As I have learned more about critical justice, social justice, in the process of writing the posts assembled into this manual, I've come to realize just how deep the roots of critical social justice are in our universities. So I invited several people to join the stream. If you are interested and you know who I am, you can DM me. Ooh, we got a taker. Hey, Emmanuel. So if you're interested, I can have up to 10 people on this stream, apparently. I'm just going to finish reading this from the conclusion of Warcraft, and then we can discuss. When I began, I saw the emergence of the critical social justice perspective in our universities as a relatively sudden and recent phenomenon. Of course, I was aware of what I thought were the primary precursors of the perspective from my undergraduate years in the 1990s. As such, as I began the project, I thought that the 1990s represented the birth of the perspective and its movement. As I learned more, however, its roots just kept stretching further and further back. I now recognize that those roots are very deep indeed. The earliest roots rest at least with the Greek skeptics, and then with Rousseau and his romantic launching of the Counter-Enlightenment. That tradition carried on largely in Europe through Kant, Hegel, and Nietzsche, and up until the post-structuralists most commonly associated with the perspective. I've come to see, however, that the critical social justice perspective issued from the marriage of this eventually nihilistic tradition and a more goal-oriented tradition emerging with Marx and brought to us through the neo-Marxist critical theorists. The post-structuralists brought the artillery, and the critical theorists the ethos. The joining of these traditions at the end of the 1980s crystallized the perspective and catalyzed the movement we now call woke. I think that should be, well, okay. It's for this reason that I believe we need to recognize that the state of our universities is not the result of 2020 Black Lives Matter or Political Correctness 1990, or Berkeley 1960s, but most consistently Gramsci and his prison notebooks 1930s. I bring this up to emphasize that this movement has a head start on us. We who want to bring universities back towards a liberal, universal enlightenment mission have witnessed a long-term effort to hijack the university and make it the handmaiden of an anti-liberal, anti-science moral activism. As a result, we mustn't imagine that righting the ship of the modern university will be done quickly. At the same time, it can be done, although it will have to be done as part of a concerted long-term effort. I hope this manual, by explaining the worldview that has become so influential in our universities, the tactics used to gain control over them, and most importantly, how those tactics can be demasked, diffused, and overturned, will serve as part of the long march to bring universities back to their mission of knowledge and truth. There's no way that's going to happen if all we have is a definition of what we oppose. We must first and foremost have a definition of what we are for. The best definition I have heard of yet has been John Vervaeke calling himself a post-nominalist Neo-Platonist. That's not a very good term. I think we need some sort of manifesto, some sort of constitution, some sort of motto, some sort of definition of who we are and what we believe in. And that's why I thought the only way to do it is really to start a conversation and actually to get people to discuss this. So, Manuel, you decided to join. What do you think?
Yeah, so I like where you went. I have this thing about identifying against, and yeah, that's never going to work, right? So you need to frame the positive message. That was going to be my initial contribution. Um, and yeah, I have to think about my dad and the conversation that I had with him. So he's in the Dutch university, and he's in the cultural department there, and they abandoned postmodern thinking. Yeah, I don't want to put a date on it, but like 10, 15 years ago, I think, uh, and they replaced it with complex systems, where the systems are multivariant and they influence each other.
Okay.
So that's the evolution that's been made there.
So
I'm not.
this is an actual academic department that was to some extent overtaken by the postmodernists. Yay, Jeff. Okay, there we go. That was sort of taken over by postmodernists and now has decided to do something different. Is that what you're telling me?
Uh, well, yes, but it's not so much that the postmodernists there were like the postmodernists that you see now in America, right? So I'm not arguing that evolution is going to be implementable in America, but
Mm-hmm.
the idea is that they came to the realization, and I don't think it was just in the university, but just in the field as such, right? Like that postmodern thinking was outdated, and they went to this new place, right, where they embraced the complexity, and I think the lesson there isn't so much that we have to re-invoke the same specific thing, but the pattern, right, where the complexity is a thing that might save us. I think that might actually be valuable, right? Like a way to reintroduce the complexity and thereby the enchantment of the world.
So, okay, what I considered doing was just coming up with a bunch of words that we use in this corner of the internet that are important And one of those was actually multivariate, because one thing that I have noticed is that, in fact, what we are dealing with is, well, first of all, we're dealing with cognitive distortions. I think anybody who has been through cognitive behavioral therapy or studied anything about it realizes that these people are pushing mental illness onto us. And very specifically, I mean, the Coddling of the American Mind by Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff gets into this. And I think more recently, James Lindsay's Groomer Schools book videos has been getting into this, that these people are actually trying to cause mental illness, which they believe will help bring about this revolution. And one of the ways they're doing that is through reinforcing cognitive distortions, which do flatten the world. They are anti-science. They're against the empirical method, which again requires a sort of multivariate, at least being willing to think of things in a multivariate way. But again, I mean, what do we call ourselves? The multivariatists, right? I thought the best I could come up with, because I do think Neoplatonism is an integral part of this, is Post-Platonism. And that's why I named the stream Post-Platonist Manifesto. But honestly, until we can define what we are for and who we are, I don't see how we're going to get anybody to join, except for Jeff's cat.
She's in.
So Jeff, what do you think?
I don't even think that I'm caught up with the conversation.
The conversation is whatever we are doing, we need to. So what I started off with was the conclusion of this book, Counter Warcraft,
Okay.
which is an okay book, but in reading it, my conclusion was that it's just not going to work, because all it is talking about, oh, these are our enemies, these are the people who are coming against us, and what are we going to do to try to defend ourselves? And if you're that much on the defensive, like, it has a section about talking to possible allies and the uninitiated, and it's like it has no advice, no real advice. It's like, yeah, talk to people who are already dissidents. Well, what is a dissident? What are we for, right? I could give you a bunch of words that a lot of us would agree with. I think a lot of us would agree with the word empiricism, right? That's a good thing. I think most of us are liberals, but that word's become so worthless, honestly, that trying to rally beneath the term liberal, it's not going to work. What do we call ourselves? Who are we? What are we trying to push? What are the defining, guiding, fundamental ideas that we can agree to, which will advance whatever we're trying to advance, which we don't seem to really understand? And that, I don't understand it. I don't think I can define it. And that's why I think we need a discussion. We need to engage this, because if we don't define things, that's the number one thing that the woke do, is they just redefine words. They steal concepts. They confuse people. I don't know if either of you watched my discussions with that white nationalist that I had. I can't say that it had anything worthwhile in it, because I was just discussing with somebody who's gotten caught up in postmodernism, and he's been completely entrapped by postmodernists in such a way that he's become a postmodernist alt-right type, right? You know, the neo-reactionaries who are basically doing the bidding of the woke and don't even recognize it. And like he keeps on spitting these postmodernists. I mean, I've continued speaking to him. These postmodernist ideas have completely captured him, and he thinks he's fighting against the postmodernists by being a postmodernist. And it's like, that just doesn't work, right? Like when I tell him there are actual historical facts, he's like, no, there's, you know, people make up history, right? That it's all meta narratives, right? It's all, and right. So what are we doing here? What are we pushing? What are we trying to help people? Like, what's this conversation? Yes, we started having a conversation, and I'm really glad. And we have people who discuss things, and I'm really glad. And we use these words like modernist and postmodernist and pre-modernist and symbolism and pattern, and right. And we have our little jargon and vocabulary. Great.
So I can speak for myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Pragmatism and embodiment. That's the two words.
Pragmatism, what was the second thing?
Embodiment.
Embodiment. Pragmatism, I agree with. Embodiment, I could agree with. One of the things that I've kept on saying is secure cognition, right? One of the problems is, people don't realize that we outsource our cognition to each other and our sanity to each other. And the other thing they don't realize is that process is being deliberately hacked, which is why we get clowns saying clownish things. And then that becomes like our attention is being guided by a bunch of clowns saying stupid things.
Well, I would argue that the social game is the intentional hacking of people's motivations, right? Like you're trying to persuade people into your game, and like I don't care where you're playing the game, like you're still doing the same thing. And I think general awareness of that is necessary and healthy. And well, yeah, like you want to do the good message. Well, if you want to fight a flat world, you got a complex message which you need to participate in, right? You need to embody in order to understand, because I think that's literally the problem with these postmodernists, right? Like I just had a conversation with Grim Grizz, and he was talking about how his gaming dissociated him from the world, right? Like, so now he could live in the game world, and so this postmodernism is a level of dissociation, and you need to have a way to reconnect, right? So I've
been calling that Gnosticism, because I think part of what's going on is they are creating some sort of absolute divide between the spiritual and the material, and so you get things like this. Oh, well, I am sexually whatever I embody. I am. I mean, part of what you're talking about is the problem of Cartesian dualism, right? These people who think that their mind is somehow disconnected from their body, right? So, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's one thing that needs to go in there is, I guess, what I would say is a negation of Cartesian dualism or Gnosticism, which is this separation, right? That you somehow are not embodied in, you are not, you know, if I punch you in the stomach, somehow that doesn't affect how your mind works. Well, yes, it does. right? But I think there's something more fundamental than that, which is that reality actually exists. Hey, Bill. Not sure. Bill was walking your dog, right?
That was correct, yes.
Yeah, you're one of two people I caught walking their dog. I don't know if you've caught up on the discussion, but basically,
he's dogmatic anyway, so you can just leave him out.
you know what? What I would love is to have some dogmas here. I really would, because yeah, that's the discussion. Like, what are we doing here? How are we doing it? And how are we defining ourselves in a way that's actually useful and going to allow us to move forward? Because the four of us here, right? I'm Jewish, Jeff is Christian, not sure what Saint Manuel and Ginger Bill would identify as.
I don't know myself.
You know, are we, what are we? Like,
I'm a person.
You're a person. So what distinguishes the four of us from the person we wouldn't include in this conversation, which is some woke NPC SJW?
My problem is I would want to include that person in this conversation.
Well, yeah, that's a huge problem, and you're a bad person for doing that.
Yeah, I get ejected from the quartet. But the answer...
What's the point of including somebody who's an NPC here? Like,
well, I know what you mean by NPC.
The first view is entertainment to a certain extent. But, sorry, that's probably how cruel I am.
That's why he's evil. That's the satanic element.
I mean,
I can see the redness, the evil coming through. That's what it is.
It's the
Manuel
ginger.
said he's a person. I believe that NPC person is a person as well, whether they're acting like it or not.
I agree with you that they are a person, but
yeah,
to some extent, okay, part of this has been my frustration with people like Sam Harris and Brett Weinstein. When I looked both the conversation with Glenn Lowry, which I didn't actually watch the entire thing, I just watched PVK's commentary because I can't stand listening to Sam Harris anymore. And then Brett Weinstein's discussion with Jonathan Pajot, where I was literally just like my blood was boiling and I wanted to punch him. Not that I would. And Sam Harris and Brett Weinstein are both mostly intelligent people, even though they say really stupid things. But what we can't just continue to talk and get nowhere. The woke have at least a 60-year a jump on us. They have taken over the most important institutions. If we are going to fight back, which I hope we do, then we're going to have to kind of define ourselves in opposition to them in a way that when we gain ground, they lose ground. And if we don't do that, what's going to happen is we're going to lose and society is going to fall apart. And we see society falling apart because this is a clown world. We can't allow clowns to run our world.
Yeah, so more words.
That's my thinking face.
Well, if I have Ginger Bill thinking, that's more computational power going into this than 20 years of my life. So
how many teraflops?
No, I mean, look, this, I think secure cognition is incredibly important. Well, here are three people who I think actually can contribute to cognition. Jeff, mostly by asking really good questions. But all three of you and a bunch of other people I added, and anybody who's watching who actually knows me, go ahead and DM me if I think you're as smart as these guys. I'll send you a link. But yes, I am actually excluding people from this conversation because I want cognition. I want us to move forward. I want us to think about the problem and move forward in the problem.
Well, that's it. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask. Is there's a couple of nested questions here, but what is the overall aim, right? Because I think people have different, like you would have like different aims. What is the end? What is the telos of a person, of humanity, of the individual person and of humanity aggregate? And then one of the questions that I wanted to ask around that, in your tradition, Jacob, what is from a Jewish tradition, what is the purpose of man? What is the end of man? And I think we can start to triangulate from there. If everybody can start to answer that question, just particularly in this group, do we all even agree on what that thing is? Because I think that's a very important question that you have to answer if you're trying to figure out, what are we going to do? What are we trying to do? What's the next thing that we need to do that's better than just all of this common vocabulary and these discussions, and you can get together and talk about these ideas? Well, if you want to get someplace else, you have to talk about what it is that you're aiming for.
Here, I have the best answer I can think of. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
So I was in church today, and we were talking about intercession. And
I knew Saint Manuel would get us into church.
Yes. But I struggle with this idea of intercession, right? But the conceptualization that I took away is it's in a hierarchy, right? And it's an element of the hierarchy making an objection, right? And the element of the hierarchy is appealing to the ideal, right? And then it's trying to manifest the ideal within that place, and then effectively it's curing corruption, right? And there's a level of participation in that, and if we're looking at a telos, right, like the telos is informed by the place that you are in the hierarchy. And sometimes the appeal has to go up all the way in the hierarchy, but there's so yes, right, like we need to unify, but also no, right, like everybody is their own puzzle piece, and they need to relate to their specific circumstance. And I think the book was trying to give people the tools to relate to their specific circumstance, but I haven't read it, but I'm just going to assume that the way that they're doing that is negatively as opposed to positively, right? How do you get to the right answer? Well, like getting to the right answer is looking at the ideal and trying as best as you can to embody the ideal, whatever that ideal is. And in some sense, right, like if your ideal is true, it's going to shine brighter than the delusion that people are putting in front of you. And that's rough, dirty work, because it won't always work. But that's the way into the solution. And other words I want to introduce is intimacy and charisma, right? Like that's the two things that go there.
Okay, intimacy and charisma. Intimacy. Okay, I listened to Mark talking to Andrea about that. I'm not sure I understood precisely where he's going there. Yes, we have problems of intimacy. I actually would say that those are more problems of faith and trust. One of the rules on my Discord server, which I am most proud of, and I've been repeating a lot lately. We're all here because we see a lot of not only incompetence but downright corruption. It is eating away at our society. People are justifiably distrustful. I hope it is perfectly clear that I am just as much worried about corrupt and negligent administration of power as everyone else here. But the solution is not to stop trying to find trustworthy people. It is to secure our distributed cognition, to earn each other's trust and extend that trust in competent ways. I think that is saying the same thing as intimacy and charisma in a more digestible and actionable way. We need to find trustworthy, competent people, and we need to extend trust to those people.
Yeah, correct. But I think intimacy is like a precondition for trust, because you need the connections, right? To have the trust on, right? So it's a capacity problem, right? Like people don't necessarily have the capacity to establish certain types of relations, right? And that's what intimacy is, right? Like intimacy is the ability to participate in a type of relationship with another person where you're on the same wavelength.
So I wouldn't say that's true. I'll explain what I mean. So for many people, they will say they will trust a certain institution. This could be the news. This could be a newspaper. It could be anything like this. And the question is, why have they got their trust? Why do these people trust that institution? And it's not an intimacy thing there. I don't think there's much intimacy going on there. Or maybe it's a one-way intimacy. Like, for instance, a news reporter will be very personal, how they will present themselves, and they'll talk directly to you on the camera. Right now, you there, kind of thing. But the thing is, that is not an intimacy. Like, I don't know this person. Or they would, like the actors, people think, oh, I could have a drink with that person. I'm going to go out and have a friend. I'm like, you have no idea what this person's like. It's an actor, for God's sake. But they'll have this weird form of intimacy, and then they'll form this trust from it. But it isn't intimacy. There is no intimacy there. So to me, I think, yeah, trust comes first in many cases. And they trust it because either there's this charisma, as you were saying, yeah, or it's because it's kind of an authority, because they've told you they're an authority. So you've got this weird, for many people. For us, we probably don't think that way at all. So we're the weirdos here, you have to remember. And everyone else is the normal stuff. So it's kind of like, yes, I am. Yes, thank you for trusting me, Sherry. So I'm just reading the live chat. Yeah,
Sherry is too busy eating chocolates to come and help us with this stuff.
I hope they're good chocolates. I hope.
So I would argue that there is a type of intimacy, and they're misplacing the implications of the intimacy, right? So they're trusting.
You can't prevent that.
Well, no, I'm not making.
No, I know.
Right?
I wasn't criticizing you saying it's not necessarily misplaced. I was just saying that the problem for me is, like, if we're talking about this discussion, like what Jake was saying. Oh, sorry, Manuel.
People don't know how to be intimate, right? So when you don't have an intimate connection with your intimacy or your capacity for intimacy, right? You're going to misapply trust, because if someone has the right thing to say about the way that I should shower, then I can also trust them to dismantle the nuclear reactors. Like, no, like those two things are not the same thing.
But I don't think the problem is as much intimacy. I do want to talk about the Dunbar number, but I think part of the problem is the fact that our relationships are being sabotaged. Relational aggression is really, really important, and men do not recognize that there actually is such a thing as relational aggression, right? So there's this guy who started showing up at our estuary group, and what he started doing is contacting people outside the group, and he made the mistake of contacting me and starting on his, and basically what I believe is that he's actually a social justice warrior who has been assigned to our group. Like, he goes to meetup groups and is like a social justice warrior, and he does it through relational aggression.
Infiltration.
Yeah.
Literal infiltration. That's like, it's how tactics do those things. But with the social justice warrior thing, they are missionaries. That is literally what they are, and it's their viewpoint. But the thing is, when you're like combating, like, how do we deal with this? But the question is, what role are they filling that we I don't want to use that, but like, that something else is not providing? Like, as you were saying, the 60-year head start. It's like, there's good reason why he put 60 years. Why put that into the 60s? In the 1960s, there was a big cultural change. But the thing is, this is one thing to me, and I'm going to offend a lot of people by saying this. The conservatives out there, you're not conserving anything. What are you conserving? You're conserving the leftism of 10 years ago. Like, in my country, we have the conservatives in power, and they've been in power pretty much since, was it 2010, 2009, around about then. And they were the party that introduced gay marriage. They introduced gay marriage. This is the Conservative Party.
Well, so that's the thing. Okay. So that's the thing. The whole idea behind gay marriage originally was that this is a conservative institution. And actually, in the gay community, it was considered a conservative institution that they were against.
So, in the UK, it was really a bit weird. It's all over the place. So it's like, I can understand the argument for civil unions completely, because that's a legal thing, pretty much, at the end of the day. Like, wills, laws, like what happens when you property and stuff like that. Okay, whatever. But then the marriage thing, it's even my viewpoint nowadays is still like, even back then and still is today, it's like, why do gays want to get married? Like, it's a religious thing, fundamentally religious, and they feel. And to me, my hypothesis is fundamentally, they feel left out and they don't want to get out of the game. That seems to be about it. And I'm sorry, that sounds horrible, but it's like, that's what else? What else is it?
There's so much going on there.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, you're taking what is an inherently heterosexual institution, a biological institution, trying to impose it both on gay men and lesbian women who do not at all like live similar lifestyles in any way. Basically 80%, I know a lot of gay people. 80% of the married gay people have open marriages, of course.
Yeah.
Because they're gay men.
I would just say that I don't know a lot, but the ones that I do are married, and they look like what we think of as traditional heterosexual couples. So we can't just say all.
You think so, Jeff?
Well,
you first of all, you're in Texas. Second, I assure you, their the Grindr profiles of at least half of them, and I assure you at least half of them have Grindr profiles, says open marriage, willing to play.
The ones I know, I would just absolutely be shocked.
I'm sure you would.
If I found that out, it would be like hearing news that, Paul Vanderklay is a secret atheist or something like that.
Well, he is a Calvinist, so he has no real choice in the matter if he is it or if he isn't, right? So
this is a whole different tangent. I just don't want to go there.
But I was just bringing up as one example. Sorry, I apologize for that.
The point is, we're taking a cultural institution that has existed for thousands and thousands of years, trying to put it into something. It's postmodernist. Okay, so when it comes down to describing modernism, postmodernism, and classicism, or whatever you want to call it, the only way I've actually been able to do it is through aesthetics, is through actually art, because that's where the word postmodernist actually comes from, and where the word modernist, I believe, comes from, is the difference between medieval art, Renaissance art, then postmodern art. Looks like we lost Jeff. When he comes back. Okay, So
Well, the word modern, if I
various.
remember, it means come from Latin modo, doesn't
I
it?
have to
So
take
just
off, guys.
now.
Oh,
Thanks for the
okay.
invite.
See you, Jeff.
See you,
Have a
Jeff.
good one.
Bye.
But yeah, like that's what modern means. It means just now, the contemporary, the measure of things. But so that's just know my poor Latin. But yeah,
postmodern art is the only thing postmodern that actually works. Like there's this band, Postmodern Jukebox. Not sure if you've ever heard of them. I
no.
love them. Great work. It's one guy who rearranges music, right? And he takes like songs you've heard and rearranges them into in a different style, and it works beautifully in art, right? It seems like the postmodernists are trying to do that with our culture, right? And they're like, hey, marriage seems like a good idea. Let's move it over to
Well, no, they're doing it everywhere. They're doing it in art as well. Like, for instance, as you very well know, that again, politics is downstream from culture, and culture is effectively downstream from art. At the end of the day, art and religion. So
and all of them are downstream from theology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the current theology at the moment is like a blend of both Hegelianism and like Calvinism. And I know I'm not sounding like being harsh on Calvinists, but that's where it comes from.
Go right ahead. Oh no. I definitely think wokesters are Calvinists. I definitely think they're Calvinists.
No, they are definitely. If you just look at the history of stuff, come from like American progressivism, comes directly from American Puritanism, and the Puritans were Calvinists. They had a Reformed theology. The way they came about in England is that they were angry at the Anglicans, and they were saying the Anglicans were still too Catholic. That's literally what was happening. They had a civil war over it, and they won. And then they got booted out, and we got Charles II back. Charles II, best king. Everyone's favorite king as well, usually, because he just partied all day long. It was great.
So we have a definition for ourselves. We are anti-Calvinists. I'll tell PBK.
No, I think my issue with the Calvinists in general, and so many people use the tulip thing to be like the shorthand, and that's I know that comes from the Armenians. That the Armenians use that as to find like, oh, this is what the Calvinists are. We're this. So the actual Calvinists didn't come up with it. It was just what they were just trying to. We're different this. But the thing was, to me, with the Calvinists, my main issue with them is effectively it's the first bit. It's the T in the entire
total depravity.
Thing. Total depravity. That is the core of it, which I just agree, because I think from the rest, everything else comes from that. And
I think double predestination, which is not part of Tulip, is a huge part of what.
But I think that's related to total depravity as well. I think they're quite intrinsically linked, in my personal view.
Then why are all of us gathering around a Calvinist preacher?
Because he's
honest
emancipated.
What'd you say, Manuel?
Sorry.
Because he's emancipating.
He's emancipated. He's a Calvinist. He's Calvinist.
He's very Calvinist as well.
Definitely very Calvinist. No.
But the thing is, he's not. This is going to sound hilarious. The preacher's not that preachy.
That's the thing. Like when I try to get him to talk Heidelberg Catechism, he refuses.
Yeah, this is my point. He knows it all extremely well. But also the thing about Paul is extremely open. If he did one of those personalities like openness, he'd probably be 99th percentile. And he's just so open to talk to people, listen to know what their viewpoints, and like literally just like, yeah, sure, no. It's like he's that kind of chap, and that's why everyone like kind of really likes him in that regard, because he will honestly want to talk to you.
So is it because he recognizes the problems of Calvinism, and that's why he's good at describing the problems of wokeism?
He understands his own tradition very well and can see it. He sees his own tradition. He says, "Oh man, I recognize that skin." But it's like, but he loves his tradition because his traditions helped him. Like he's seen how, again, his father and stuff, all the stuff and tradition. So that's his family. So he's not going to abandon his family. So maybe even he may have disagreements with it himself, but to him, that is his family. So that's kind of the thing is we love the man. In this case, we're not loving necessarily other aspects of him. I can't put that in words
Well,
correctly.
one thing he doesn't have, which I think is really part and parcel of what's wrong with wokeism, is this idea of disposable people.
Yeah.
I mean, did you guys listen to? So I might just pull this up. Yuval Harari, not one of my favorite people in the world, is okay, kid. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to coordinate. Yuval Harari, just today, I saw a video of him talking about all these worthless people, right? That what are we going to do with all these worthless people? Is it and the only solution he could think of is drugs and computer games, right? Too many people who we just don't need. You know, they're just worthless, right? What Paul doesn't believe people are disposable, whereas the woke actually believe lots of people are disposable, which is actually, I think they are in fact genocidal. I think they would murder.
Oh no! This is the thing. Is you are 100% correct on this. Like 100%. They have got this utopian goal, and they do not care who they'll kill to get there. And I mean that seriously. Like some of these would be the same people, like even a communist, which is not Calvinistic in the way, but the communists would say, like, oh, we didn't reach the true communism because if I was Stalin, if I was Lenin, I would have only killed 3 million. It's like, and it's like, yeah, well, I wouldn't be as bad. And it's like, wait. They honestly mean this. They've got this so much hubrisity to them that they will go over and like, nope, this is the true goal. It's for the greater good. For the greater good. Sorry, I'm now just getting flashbacks from Hot Fuzz. It's a brilliant film, actually. But yeah, and it's not just the worthlessness. The problem is that we also have to be careful when we're using the term NPC.
Mhm.
Like, I understand what we mean by it, but outsiders may not like, oh, that's just like, you're being derogatory here. And I'm like, for those type of people, most of the time are NPCs, including myself. Because you don't need to think most of the time, and you shouldn't. But many people are not capable of thinking beyond it, beyond like basic thoughts. Because most of the time, people, when they think they're thinking, are actually just taking on someone else's opinion. They've not thought about it. They've just absorbed it. This is now my personality. And that's kind of like the NPC getting a new program to execute. So that's kind of my viewpoint. Oh, you got another thing from here? Okay.
Let me actually play this because
yes, please do.
It's just that ugly. Let's see if this works. Hopefully it will.
In the Industrial Revolution of the 19th
Can you guys hear this?
Mm-hmm. Century, what humanity basically learned to produce was all kinds of stuff like textiles and shoes and weapons and vehicles. And this was enough for very few countries that underwent the revolution fast enough to subjugate everybody else. What we're talking about now is the second industrial revolution, but the product this time will not be textiles or machines or vehicles or even weapons. The product this time will be humans themselves. We are basically learning to produce bodies and minds. Bodies and minds are going to be, I think, the two main products of the next wave of all these changes. And if there is a gap between those that know to produce bodies and minds and those that do not, then this is far greater than anything we saw before in history. And this time, if you're not part of the revolution fast enough, then you probably become extinct. Once you know how to produce bodies and brains and minds, so cheap labor in Africa or South Asia or wherever, it simply counts for nothing. Again, I think that the biggest question maybe in economics and politics of the coming decades will be what to do with all these useless people. I don't think we have an economic model for that. My best guess, which is just a guess, is that food will not be a problem. With that kind of technology, you will be able to produce food to feed everybody. The problem is more boredom and what to do with them and how will they find some sense of meaning in life when they are basically meaningless, worthless. My best guess at present is a combination of drugs and computer games.
Right.
The-
Oh my fucking god! Sorry
Right.
for my blasphemous and swearing, but
but let me just say, anybody who actually understands economics, what he's saying is completely idiotic.
oh, it is idiotic completely.
Yeah, there is
50 books of
yeah.
economics behind me.
Economically, the man, I don't understand how this man has become an important voice in our society. He just parrots talking what other people have said, and he doesn't do it very well, and he's just not that smart. But for some reason he's treated like an like a brilliant mind, and it's like, why? How? I don't understand what makes him somebody anybody should ever listen to,
So this
especially
is
when he
related.
says
I
things
think
that
I've got an
stupid.
idea.
Go ahead.
My hypothesis, and hypotheses here, is that he's a midwit. So midwittery and NPC-ness are very kind of like intrinsically linked. So for people who don't really know what midwittery means, or a midwit, simply put, it's someone who is above average intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pretty smart, but they know they're not that smart. So they try and prove that they are smarter than it, trying to be smarter than they are, and they'll try and show it. It's like someone who thinks like, "Oh, I'm really good at a fight. You should see me in a fight. I can do this." Compared to someone who actually can fight, won't even bother talking about it, because it's like when it comes to shove, they're like, "Yeah, just go away." So that midwittery is there, but then because they're trying to show how good they are, they can show it. So to him, he's the mouth puppet of someone like what's it, Klaus Schwab of the WEF, World Economic Forum. He is very, and that's, he's articulate. He's very well spoken in that regard, and he can present those opinions, and he can do it in a very articulate manner. He can do very kind of like, he's abstracting a person away. And look, it's the economic ways of doing this is how we would do it. Okay, how would we plan this action? How would we do this managerial approach to things? Because this is actually a view of a midwit, is they're very managerial as well. Like they want a plan to follow, and this is how we can do it. If we've got a plan, it means I'm very smart. I've planned it all out. And I think that's kind of the issue. Like he's appealing to that group as well.
Yeah, I'd articulate it more as an answer, right? Like, you don't have to have the plan. You just have to give people the sense that they have an answer, right? Because what do people want? Well, people want a complex, controversial, right? Because that's where the excitement lies. Problem, right? So he's presenting the problem, and now we're in this problem space, and it's like, but I also have the solution, right? And now he's like this is what I think social media is doing, right? Like this, it's this excitement trigger, and then giving the dopamine. Oh, like I get what he's saying, so like now I have resolved this issue in my head without having to spend all the energy of thinking through it and whatever, especially if you regard him as an authority.
Well,
but that's the function of all like people like that.
The problem is that our society does treat him like an authority.
Because he's been told to be an authority. No, that's the point. He's been said he's the authority. And people go,
Who said that? Why?
This is the point. So the problem is like the consensus making apparatus of our culture has always been and always will be by a smaller elite group of people. That's
as
how
it should
always
be.
As it should be, but that's regardless of how it works. So the point is the small elite people at the moment are the ones in very ways are kind of not competent,
They're not
but also
elite.
nefarious. They're not very elite. Again, I'm an elitist. I just want my elites to be kind of, well, decent, good, actually pretty elite. I'm like, I want to look up to that person. Not like,
look,
that's my elite? Really?
If the people leading our society were smarter than I am, I wouldn't mind. There's a lot of people smarter than I am. If Bill and Sam were like the people leading our country, like I would be like, okay, I'll go do something else. It's my problem is these people are idiots. They're innumerate, they're illiterate, and they're just idiots.
They're not complete idiots. I should be very careful there, but I know what you mean. They are not impressive. Like they have gotten there not through merit. It's more of a very weird aristocracy where they are just like the idiotic family where they've got now effectively become degenerate genes going in there. Like it's like, oh, it's the children's have literally become so much inbreeding, they've all got dumb.
You know,
In that metaphorical sense.
I looked up his biography, thinking maybe like his father or his mother, like maybe he inherited a position of authority. He didn't even do that. Like,
but to be fair, right? Like I think the argument that you're making towards him is an argument that a lot of the progressives are making towards Joe Rogan, right? Like it's just something where a person is in a space and they get authority from the space. However they got there is less.
Actually, I
relevant.
disagree with the Joe Rogan point, because people like listen to Joe Rogan because they like Joe Rogan the man, not because of his opinions. Most of the time, many people just don't like Joe Rogan.
Well,
like
no,
his
it's more
opinions.
than that. It's more
yeah,
than
but
that.
it's the
I listen to Joe
criticism
Rogan.
that they have. I don't
No,
care whether the criticism is correct. Like it's the same frustration.
Manuel is right. It is the same it is the same frustration. The problem is they're wrong. Joe Rogan is a very good interviewer. He asks people incisive questions. There's a reason why he's been able to destroy these nitwits who go on his show thinking they can just, lead him along. Who was that? Sanjay Gupta, right?
Yeah, that one.
He destroyed him. Joe Rogan destroyed Sanjay Gupta. Similarly, who's that guy? Adam destroys everything.
Oh no, I know him. Adam
ruins everything.
Schiff. No, Adam.
But he didn't
No,
destroy
not Adam
Sam
Schiff.
Harris.
No, Adam Schiff. No, I'm just trying to think the surname.
Joe Rogan didn't destroy Sam Harris.
No, it's not that surname.
Okay, the thing with Sam Harris is he's not actually dumb. He's just ideologically possessed.
But like not again, right? Like okay, so what, right?
Conover.
Like,
Sorry.
Okay, Adam Conover. Yeah, he went on there and he was trying to talk about transgender, like give the party line on transgenderism to Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's like, no, you're just wrong, and just blew him to pieces.
But my point is more. It's like, okay, so like props to Joe Rogan because like he's obviously very skilled and whatever, right? But like he's running into problems, right? Like maybe some people are in an area where he's just not well versed, right? Or maybe
I think Sherry is right. Part of the problem is he likes Sam Harris. What I've noticed is he really loves who's that guy, Kyle Kulinski? Secular Talk. Yeah, and Kyle Kulinski. Kyle Kulinski is an idiot, but Joe Rogan thinks that he's a political genius.
Kyle Kulinski is articulate.
Yeah,
but an idiot.
Yeah,
this is the thing. Sam Harris, for the longest time, I couldn't figure it out, and then in the end, I mean, some people disagree with it, but Sam Harris is actually a midwit, and it took me the longest time to actually realize this because I was kind of. Sam Harris is very articulate and actually very well spoken. Yeah. And the thing that made me properly then go, oh yeah, that's why I couldn't understand it, is the best way of putting it. Sam Harris is your equivalent of posh. Like he comes from the like showbiz background. He's been brought up all in this. He's in the high echelons of many different society in general. He is part of that life, and that is how he gets there. But the thing is like I remember the thing that really did it for me was when he was discussing with like he was on the stage with Jordan Peterson and then Brett was discussing this, and it's like, well, Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris said, oh, okay, what do you mean by God? And then Jordan Peterson just did the big list, and then the response from Sam Harris is fun. It was, well, I don't see no description there about God that doesn't want me to masturbate. And then from that thing alone, I
was thinking of that exact same thing. Yeah.
I had to watch that video 3 times until I went, oh, that's why. I just couldn't figure it out, because to him, he has a well-conceived idea of what God means. It's like the idea of what a 13-year-old has. The 13-year-old who's just discovered, like, I can do this down here. Why don't they want me to do it? It's like, oh, he must be stupid. Like,
and who has no concept of biology or what the social implications of masturbation would be, because Brett's answer was, I can think of why God would care if you masturbate.
Oh
And
God,
it's
not even
like-
just that. There's also other things, like for instance, have you got something better to do with your time? Like that's just another simple question. It's like, yeah, I have. Then why do that? Just do that thing instead. Like there's always this. Have you got something better to do? And if the answer is no,
Well,
just use
else
that
you
logic.
have
It's
to
like,
play computer games or take drugs. Like-
I mean, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
but I want to bring this back a little bit, right? Because
Thank
I
you.
think it's in the way that we make sense, right? So
Right.
Fafeki has this word salience, right? And salience is effectively the emotional signal that's coming with the information that you're getting, right? And this I also want to respond to. The idea of the TV, right? So the TV, right, is giving us a lot of salience because there's this trustworthy seeming person that seems to know what they're talking about, and they have this institution behind them, and they're presenting things in a way that seems to cohere, right? So there's all of these signals of trustworthiness, or could be signals of trustworthiness, and now, how do we relate to the information? Well, if we're emotionally based or empathically based in our sense making, right? Like we're going to privilege those signals unconsciously over the information, right? And then we're gonna save this information in ourselves in a way where we're acceptant of the information, right? And then Fafeki also has this idea of relevance, right?
Mhm.
And relevance is, I guess, the truthiness of the signal, right? So it's how much it accords with reality or its usefulness for you, and those two things don't always overlap, right? Like something that might be highly salient is someone says an insult or whatever, right? But like the insult isn't relevant, right? Because like it's not affecting your life unless you let it affect your life in some sense, right? So what you want to do is you want to have your relevance and your salience kind of the same, right? Because now you're relating to signals as they truly are, as opposed to you get driven by your passions. And I think this is the problem, right? Like this is why these people are all coming over to a group of people, right? And especially people who like them for whatever reason, as authoritative.
I think Sherry had a very good point about why Rogan couldn't take Sam Harris apart, because he agrees with him too much. He likes him too much.
Well, not
And
he agrees with him, likes with him, but he also not just when you say agree, like he's not that far away from him either. Like in what's the best way of putting it is, Joe Rogan naturally would be a new atheist, just naturally, like that's where he would be. And the only reason he is not is because of someone like Jordan Peterson. And in fact, I would also say Ben Shapiro. As I'm not a big fan of Ben Shapiro, but Ben Shapiro does seem to get on with Joe Rogan. And because he is now surrounding himself with people who are not new atheists, he is now thinking about things differently. Doesn't mean he actually agrees with them, but he's thinking about it differently.
right.
But also, interestingly, this in general, the new atheist movement is dying out. Completely dying out and being replaced by some other things in general. I won't go into that detail yet. But like to me, it's interesting to see that the new atheists still try and cling to stuff. Like, for instance, a good example of this would be Rationality Rules, which I still watch from time to time, not because I like him, but because it's kind of more interesting to see how that way of thinking still works to me, because I need to make sure I still understand it. If that's a weird, I know I'm probably a weirdo in this regard. And I watch videos not because I hate or like them, but just like I want to make sure I understand this way of thinking still, because the way that they frame things, the way that they install things, it's like, yeah, great, you've criticized this idiotic viewpoint, well done. So could you still man it? And I don't think they could. Any of those kind of people.
Okay,
and,
but
yeah,
there's a problem. There's a problem with the Steel Manning thing, which is there are idiotic ideas, and one of the biggest problems I have with PBK is sometimes he will steel man things far better than the people who actually believe in them.
Yes.
Right? So he will actually figure out a way of making sense of pure bullshit and propping it up as, and we do that too much. We just need to sometimes say, this is bullshit. F off.
No, but I do it for myself mainly so I can because to me, this is how I work. I'm not saying everyone else should do this. I want to be honest. I want to be honest with myself and honest with someone else and say, look, could I actually represent that person's views without corrupting it? Like, could I get to this person? I could describe their views to them and go, yes, that's what I believe. And then I would go, okay, go full on. If you're talking about economics from earlier, Bomberverk, who would go, yes, I'll make the biggest steel man and go, yeah, this is why it's wrong.
But
Like,
it has
why did
to
you even
be their
believe this?
views. But it has to be their views.
Yes,
But-
their views. Yeah.
What bothers me is when people steal man and make something much better than the views of that person.
Yes, I wouldn't try and do that far because
Well,
sometimes
people
I'm like,
people end up doing that quite a bit.
yeah, I can do that. I can do the Marxist view very better than most Marxists. But like, that's not really that hard. You just have to read Marx.
But I think steel manning is the wrong tactic. Like
No, I'm not
I
trying
know-
a tactic to apply to others. It is literally just me. It's trying to be, how can I be honest with myself? And I found that to be useful for me.
Yeah, but even there, right? Like going back to relevance, right? Like what do we pay attention to? Like how do we spend our energy? And like you can say, well, like it's a good pastime, like maybe, but if you think is it actually valuable to steel man a position compared to doing something else? I would say most likely not. Maybe maybe the
It
postmodern
depends.
one because it's such a big deal, but like I would argue still, like no, most likely not, right? Like, and you want to get into the realm of values, and it's like okay, right, and this is where relevance comes in, right? Like, so why is this relevant, right? We were talking about Calvinism, and their what was the thing?
Total depravity.
Depravity, right? Like it's like I was thinking, how do you actually embody that, right? Like what does that mean in participation? And like I can't figure it out in my head what that would mean. Like maybe if you're like a complete saint or whatever, right? Like maybe you could go there, but before you're at that point, like that's maladaptive. Like I literally think it's maladaptive. So
I think anybody who wasn't raised with the idea of total depravity, who actually espouses the idea of total depravity, is just confessing. I just think it's a confession.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Yeah, because for me, it's like, I've never murdered anybody, and I'm never going to murder anybody. And I'm sure that if I did murder someone, I would feel really bad about it. I really would. So this whole idea of total depravity, that I don't want any good, or like, I hear that and I'm like, if you believe that, either you were taught it like Paul was, or you're actually a genuinely psychopathic person that I should stay away from.
There's the middle ground, which I don't think is total depravity anyway. It's the view that yes, you can do pure evil, and you probably will, because a good example from literally only not far along is like old COVID stuff. It's amazing how many people I saw who were pretty much went full on, yes, I would turn these people into the authorities because they're breaking the rules. And I'm like, oh my God, these people are like mindless zombies and evil. Like they don't even realize it. Or they do realize it. No, there was some. Oh God, I won't go. That's why I try to be vague.
Well,
but to be fair to
Solzhenitsyn-
them,
yeah.
render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and like when you're serving the king, you should serve the king. So it's
No,
like,
there's a difference. There's a difference between like, okay, your neighbors are having a party outside with their family, just their family, and it's like, oh, because it's over 6 now. It's over 6. You're not gone. They're breaking the rule because they've got 8 of them there. We'll have to call the police on them. Compared to saying like, oh, these people are then, I don't know what they're doing like COVID parties with their children or something, like with their like chickenpox party. I don't know. That's even then go even scaling. Like, it's their own garden. I don't give a damn what they're doing. I'm going to leave them be. But there are many people who did that. It's like,
And I'm sorry, render unto Caesar must have its limitations.
No,
because-
render on Caesar
Yeah,
just
but
means
I agree. Like, there's limitations, and I'm not agreeing with what they did. I'm just saying we can't have complete, perfect sense making, all of us, right? So
Okay.
so we have to outsource these things to authorities, and like the authorities are the authorities, and the fact that the authorities are corrupt isn't fully the responsibility of the individual living in the society. So
I wasn't making that argument. It was more of the
no,
argument
but
of these.
I'm not making an argument. I'm just saying that they're behaving correctly, right? Like they're having the correct behavior, but they're in a bad system, and I don't think it's correct to call that evil. Like,
Okay. So
No. When I say
but-
evil, okay, so
okay.
evil, I mean a very specific sense. I mean it's the privation of good, as in they don't even know what goodness is.
Okay, but let's get back to why we're here. Okay. At some point, we have to define basic principles, basic ideas, basic things that we're willing to say, look, if we promulgate these ideas, if we define ourselves in this way, we are going to, in fact, remove this corruption that is, in fact, destroying our world, right? And our world is falling down around us. I can't, I mean, part of the problem is one side of the debate are the Steven Pinkers who think that if you just got rid of Donald Trump, now everything's going to be perfect. I'm sure he feels that now that Biden is president, life is just perfect. Did you guys see him dancing when?
Yeah, I was about to bring up the dancing. You read my mind there. You read my mind.
And it's like, okay, you have idiot midwits like Steven Pinker.
Actually, no, I wouldn't call Steven Pinker a midwit. Actually, I won't call him a midwit.
Then,
But the
then
problem
what's
is,
his
I would
problem?
call him. The problem with him is he's fundamentally like, look, I'm a good guy. Look, this is the good side. We want to help people, and this is people should join my side to help people. Everyone who doesn't agree with me, they're not very nice people, and they should join my side. Which is, I don't think is a midwit position. I just think that's a. What's the best way of putting it? The thing about Steven Pinker is if you actually read him, he's actually read like people like Thomas Sowell, and he really loves Thomas Sowell. Like you could see him, like, oh God, he loves him. So he's clearly read stuff like that, and he's even if you've seen him seen quotes like this, okay, Thomas Sowell's Conflict Divisions is one of the best descriptions of human nature I've ever read. Like this is the best ways of modeling and stuff. But at the same time, he doesn't realize he has the unconstrained vision.
Okay,
which is
so, So here's my controversial, modest proposal.
Okay, please do.
Jonathan Haidt has his whole moral bases things where he has, he says there are the 5 or 6 moral taste buds that we have, and people on the left tend to only really have 2 of them, whereas conservatives have all 5 or 6, whichever he's on right now. How about we label people who don't have all 5 moral bases as morally handicapped and don't allow them to vote?
So right. So the first bit, morally handicapped.
Just don't go there.
Allowed to vote. Hey, no. My view is no one should vote. No one at all should vote. I should just be the king, and I should be the absolute monarch, and that's how it works. That's how it should work. I'm joking. But no, I know what you're saying with this, though, because the problem is with voting in general, it's like historically, you had to have skin in the game. You had to have land. You had to be a property owner. You had to have the heir or the lordship or anything like that. You had to have literally skin in the game to as to why you were voting. And until even like literally 100 years ago or so, just over 100 years ago, not everyone could vote. I'm not just saying the women couldn't vote. Not even many men could vote. And
I am at a point where if we were to repeal the 19th Amendment, I would not complain. I'm sorry. I'm just there already.
Sorry, I was not expecting that. But yeah, I also find people don't really know the history of women's right to vote either. Actually, if people actually read the history of how it happened, they'll also go, oh, was that really why they got it? Like, if people actually want to know, the short answer is they wanted the right to vote, okay, but when it came to right to vote, you had other responsibilities to come with. So in America, you had conscription, which is the same in the UK, but you also had bucket duty, and the women went, yeah, we don't want those two things; they're too hard.
Is that jury
effectively.
duty?
So jury conscription, so army, bucket duty was like 5 thing, and also jury duty as well. So you had those 3 things, and effectively they didn't want any of them. And when they presented it, many of the governments actually presented this to the women. The majority of, I think it was like 60% of women said, yeah, we don't want to do that. We'd rather not vote if we didn't have to have that. So that was literally in like the 1860s. So like this is very like early on. So then when it came to the 1920s, 1910s and 1920s, this is when they were trying to pass the legislation. This is when they got it passed through. Like, okay, you can vote, but you don't have to do any of that stuff. So actually, what they wanted wasn't the right to vote and all the stuff the same as man. They didn't want to be equivalent to a man. They wanted more stuff, and they didn't want to have the bad things of men. Which sounds like, oh, I'm being like anti-feminist. Yes, I'm anti-feminist. Even the first wave. But this is the point. It's like, no.
Sherry needs to jump in here because we're gonna just sound like a bunch of misogynists.
But I'm not. No. My view is like we need to get rid of those other things that men had as well. Like they had to do. Like I'm against conscription and all that stuff as well. So it's like no. You don't just try and get rid of just get rid of it all for everyone, please. That'd be better.
No voting. Yeah. I look. I don't know what the answer is, but whatever we're doing, it's not working.
I think a lot of things are quite interesting to look at it because historically, what was supposed to many people choose to say democracy is a good, like in itself, like it's an intrinsic good, and I'm thinking, what are you on about? No, it's never been that ever.
No.
And people do. They always think it's very interesting to say this, and they all say we need democracy for freedom. Like I'm at the point now in my life where I'm like, freedom and democracy, they are completely incompatible with each other. Like you're gonna have to have one or the other.
I mean, all the lynchings in the South, those were democratic. Those were all democratic. A majority of people got together and decided to murder people.
Yeah, I think this is
democracy
sometimes the view, but the argument is this double-sided coin is that many people say, look, we don't really need democracy because people are idiots. So like, for instance, the entire Brexit thing was a good example of this. Like, for instance, at the time, I'll be honest with you, I voted to leave because my at the view at the time was like, look, I was a big supporter of democracy, and I could name the arguments, I could quote them properly, and it was like, look, the fundamental argument wasn't even democracy; it was like individual sovereignty. Like, why would even the average guy down the pub, he would go say, why would I want to be ruled by some random bureaucrat in Belgium? And that's like literally like the viewpoint. I'm like, well, yeah, why wouldn't you? But then the people who were like very pro EU, they were pretty much like, yeah, but they were making arguments like, of course it's democracy because technically these people who are representatives, like, oh yeah, we anoint them because I'm like, what? We anoint them? That's not democracy. Still twisting around circles. All the things is like, no, we shouldn't because they know better than us because like none of this makes any sense. But like all their arguments were like, we want empire and these elites know better than us, so they're good imperialists. It's like, what?
Well, okay, so somebody brought this point up when Peter Thiel and Eric Weinstein did their thing at the Ice House here in Los Angeles, which they actually, I think he never actually broadcasted it, but their answer was, yeah, but when you look at it, you see that actually if we don't have democracy and we don't have the common stupid people voting, it's the stupid people who are actually keeping the supposedly smart people from doing the really stupid things.
To a certain extent, yeah. This is in many regards that voting is kind of a necessary evil when you actually have like a state in general, like politicians stuff. Because you're right, the stupid people will just vote and go against, I don't like that, I'll just get rid of it. So there's this weird proposal thing going on. But there's also the other issues that many people say voters are very low information, and they are. Most of them a best way of putting this, I remember from Brian Kaplan's book, The Myth of the Rational Voter. And in it, he was trying to make an analogy like, okay, if you give someone a test on like basic politics, and if you, on average, most people only get 50%. In this basic politics, you expect everyone should get 100% to be literate. If you give someone the alphabet and they only knew half their letters, what would you call them? You'd call them illiterate, wouldn't you?
Well, or you
so
call
people who can only do half the basic answers of politics, they're the equivalent of illiterate in politics. But
No,
this
no,
is how
but-
the average
or-
person's like.
No, or you call the alphabet wrong because apparently people don't need the full alphabet.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I'm so wrong about that. Oh,
No, but like that's a serious argument, right? Like if we're talking about relevance realization, like if people get along with half an alphabet, like why do we have the rest, right? Like, and obviously there's specific specialized reasons to have the rest, but why are we basing things on the specialized reasons?
no,
That's
but
the
I
big
mean
question.
something like the alphabet. Like my 2-year-old niece can do the entire alphabet.
Right.
So I'm just saying, like, there's a certain level
Yeah.
thing where I'm like, yeah.
You're making a commitment argument more so than an intelligence argument.
Look,
Yeah, it's more of, yeah, I know I am.
if we could have, for example, simple math tests, and that would in fact, I have another test. Ask, should we spend $1 billion to save a baby's life, right? And anybody who doesn't say no should not be allowed to vote, right? Because $1 billion to save a baby's life, are you
I mean,
an
if it
idiot?
just saves one life, I can't even say that straight.
Every
No,
life
that
is
sounds horrible. When you
priceless,
say that, it
Phil.
sounds so horrible. And then you may saying, look, you're being so utilitarian about this, and utilitarian is evil. Like, I agree, utilitarian is evil. It's literally the definition of evil. But it is actually when you
But
think about
$1
it.
billion is $1 billion, and if you save that one baby's life for $1 billion,
Hey, you don't know. That baby could become the next Nobel
Hitler.
Prize winner.
oh
Oh.
bullshit!
Of course
Like
it is.
I think the chances of that baby becoming Hitler is greater than a Nobel Prize winner, because like how would you feel if they spend $1 billion on keeping you alive? That would mess you up.
Okay, who are we? What are we doing here?
No idea. I'm here for the fun.
No, well, I want to get back to the relevance part, right?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Well, like if we okay, so what are the big values, right? Or is it virtues, right? It's truths that we're trying to seek, right? So we're trying to promote methods to get to truth, and combating corruption, right? Like so I think that's two things that we hold high. And in order to do that, right, like we need to be able to shine a light, and I think the light isn't shown through intellectual argumentation. Like I don't think that will get us there, because people are stuck in their framework, and like Jacob was talking about this dude that he was talking with, and he didn't make any progress for forever, right? Like so the fact that is true, right? Like just proves that that's a waste of time and energy. And the way that you want to make progress is to get people to justify their things and get their own thinking process going, and yeah, it's going to be a long grind still, but I don't think you can win the argument. Like I don't think that's an option that we have.
Okay, so another concept I considered adding to our vocabulary here. Let me see if I can get this to show. I'm not very good at StreamYards yet.
Yeah, it's fine. I think I've only ever used it once before. So.
Boom! Catholicism. We all should become Catholic. Is
Coming
this,
from the Jew. Wow.
is this showing? Okay. So subsidiarity. Subsidiarity is an organizing principle that matters ought to be handled by the smallest, lowest, or least centralized competent authority. Political decisions should be taken at a local level if possible, rather than by a central authority. The Oxford English Dictionary defines subsidiarity as the idea that a central authority should have a subsidiary function performing only those tasks which cannot be performed effectively at a more immediate or local level. And
Oh, okay. So in the British tradition, this is called localism.
in the United States, we generally talk about federalism in a
No,
similar
I
manner.
would honestly just type in localism, and you probably
Mm.
just get the acts of localism, like the United Kingdom. Seriously, it's exactly what the same is. It's the idea that the smallest unit should be governing stuff. So localism politics. There you go. Click it, and then
Okay.
it probably pop up of localism in the United Kingdom and stuff like that. But it's the same kind of similar idea: is that you should go as small as possible.
Localism describes a range of political philosophies which prioritize the local. Generally,
Yeah.
localism supports local production and consumption of goods, local control of government, and promotion of local history, local culture, and local identity. Localism can be contrasted with regionalism or centralized government, with its opposite being found in the unitary state.
Yeah, I mean, there's specific things in the localism there. I'm just looking there. So United Kingdom, blah 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 blah. Localism in politics is what I'm looking for particularly. But yeah, like the political thing is localism is a philosophy is related to the principle of subsidiarity. That's the first line. So yeah, that's why to me I was like, oh yeah, that's localism, because maybe it is because the English tradition is very weird, I should say, because when we had our Protestant Revolution. The English Protestant Revolution was actually very different to like the rest of Europe. The rest of Europe was very, it isn't technically bottom up. It was still like elite control, but it was more like the people became it. Whereas in the UK, it was more. I said it wasn't UK. It was just England at the time. It was like, yeah, the king wanted a divorce to have this nice little sweet thing on the side, and like, okay, I'm going to start my own religion. I want to be the Pope instead, or not necessarily the Pope. I want to be the figurehead and then have the Archbishop.
Defender of the faith. Like the Queen is.
Yes, the defender of the faith. That's what I mean. Yeah, so that's what he was trying to be. So the thing is, he didn't realize what he just did. He just perfected one. I want Catholicism, but I don't want the Pope. That was effectively what it was. And then it was slowly all of the other people pushing it in and making it in there, which is kind of what the thing was. So in that sense, the British people were still very Catholic, historically speaking. So these ideas come through are still there in that tradition. And there's that slow tradition. There's not been this massive revolt. It's like, again, England is very weird. We've had one revolution and we reverted back. Again, the Civil War was a revolution and we reverted back.
Well,
like,
British
government,
I mean, as somebody who studied law, British government is actually, and common law, the way
I
it
love
used to
common law.
function. Unfortunately, in the United States, we've adopted a lot of French legal ideas.
Yeah, we've
over
had
the
a lot of
past
civil law
100
stuff.
years.
You should check out the Dutch system.
Yeah, well, the Scottish system, they have a mixture of both common law and civil law, which are literally at odds to each other, but it's Scotland for each other. England's bizarre, as our legal system has got screwed up ever since Tony Blair, which is the 90s. Tony Blair, I'm not even going to tell you what your views are on regardless. All I'll say is he introduced more legislation in his first term than the entirety of the English history combined.
So Wikipedia is telling me that the Netherlands uses civil law, which is precisely the French system that's
Roman law.
We
just call that Roman law and English law then, if you want to do it. Better way of putting it.
Yeah. The civil law system. I mean, I anyway.
Yeah,
the Catholic. So the Catholic Church is an organization of over 1 billion people, the most successful, actually functioning organization, although I'm guessing a lot of the traditionalist Catholics would say it's not functioning very well. I know how much they love Pope Francis, but I want a manifesto with concepts which can help us get over all the problems we have. I think subsidiarity is one of them. I think pragmatism is one of them. I think embodiment, I guess, I mean, really for me, it's more being anti-Cartesian dualism. Like, what do you call not Cartesian dualism?
Well, the problem is with that is, I'll be very careful here. So actual Cartesian dualism is not what you mean in this case. But I understand the problem with the Cartesian dualism is it goes very, very quickly into something which is effectively kind of a form of Gnosticism.
Yeah.
Very, very, very quickly. But Descartes, I'm going to defend Descartes here slightly. He was just trying to solve the mind-body problem. Like, okay, what is like the mind properties and the things? Okay, they must have the different substances, and they can't be. Or another way of putting it is,
But they
the mind
don't.
doesn't right. Well, this is the problem with the word substance. So the issue is there are different traditions, but to me, I'm still in the position I'm like, look, hylomorphism. That sounds like Cartesian dualism, just with extra steps.
I have no idea what hylomorphism is. What I do
Hylomorphism
know,
is the Thomistic position on the mind-body problem.
what I do know is that when I go shopping at Costco, if I'm hungry, I will buy much more food than if I'm not.
Yeah. Oh no. So this is the problem. So your mind isn't
Mhm.
located here. That's
Okay.
the first thing.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I'm going to state. The second thing is your mind is not your brain, and also you think with your entire body. Your stomach thinks. You have to remember this. If the digestive system, if you detached it from your brain, it would still work and run because it has its own bundle of nerves at the back, and literally it's that complicated. So when you think with your gut, you are literally thinking with your gut. And this is what sometimes surprises people. It's like, no, your mind isn't here. The only reason people mind think is here is because your eyes are there.
But yeah, like, so this is getting really complicated because now we're getting into identity.
I
So
apologize. Sorry.
What are you identifying with, right? Like, so I can identify with a space full of people, right? Like that is an identity I can assume. So now, like, I am a consequence of the spirit that's inhabiting that place, right? So, and this goes actually to a thing that I've been struggling with Mark, and it's like, okay, so there's these levels of reality, right? And I think that was the thing that was highlighted with, what was it, the word again? Oh my god, I'm so bad with the localism, right? So
yeah. Oh, subsidiarity, yeah.
Subsidiarities, right? So the way I started thinking about principalities is it are the organizing principles, right, or set of rules at a layer of reality, right? Like, so you can say it's like a natural law that is only functioning at a certain wavelength or whatever, right? And then, well, the question becomes, well, can we have discernment on these layers, and what the appropriate laws are at these layers, right? So a way of thinking about that could be, I don't like this, so I'm not going to say individual, on the personal level, on the family level, on the community level or the church level, right? That would be the Christian sequence there, and they form separate principles. And Peterson goes into this with like, is it good for you? Is it good for you in the future? Is it good for the people around you, right? Like, so there's ways of thinking, and there's ways of doing things. And when you get into the high political level, right, like, you're relating to statistics, right? Like, so one person is a tragedy, and 10,000 people is a statistic, right, when they die. So there's this this problem, right, where you need to swap between these layers, right? Because, like, you can't keep on the level of statistics, right? Like you need to make a decision on the level of statistics that can be related to the person. And if you can't make the translation to the specific in the correct way, and I think it also goes in the way that you're doing sense making or whatever, right? Like so you're relating to the ideal, right? And now, like, you're in an embodied situation, and, like, how does the ideal look like when you're participating right now? And so you get in this really fuzzy area where the right answer is not actually the right answer. The right answer is how well you can enact the right answer.
Okay, two things. First of all, both of you should be able to share your screens if you decide you want to, so just let me know. Second thing, so I am going to introduce yet another modest proposal, which is which is the Jewish idea that the basic, fundamental, smallest unit of society is a married man and woman.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to introduce something from economics, which is from
Okay.
Friedrich Hayek. He makes the distinction between the family unit and the market. So he says that how a market interacts is very bottom up. This is how it organizes itself, and it's very like it's on a market. That's how it works. But the family unit is very top down. In fact, it's very like here are the family. This is mother and father dictating how things work. In fact, in a family, it's very communist.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense that is how it works. So he makes this distinction between it's the family unit and then the market unit. So the agents within the market.
Mhm.
And he made this distinction. It's a very interesting distinction to say that actually he's not talking about, and when you think of different things, the individual isn't the actual thing to look at. It is the family unit. And he's not a conservative. He was a liberal in the classical sense of it. He was literally a classical liberal.
This was Hayek?
Friedrich Hayek, yes.
Okay.
He had this idea, and it's a very interesting like distinction. And it's like, oh, that makes sense, because especially when you look at markets, and you maybe know from like Jordan Peterson, women make up most of the decisions in the household, in the market, and the buying decisions, which is actually interesting to think, oh, it's not the individual members of the society. It's like, no, it's the family that makes the decisions.
Right.
And that's kind of the weirder way to look at things. So if you try and model in economics purely based on, oh, hello.
She couldn't resist.
You couldn't resist. You had to get in here. So no, when you were saying like the unit is the family unit is the thing, I'm like, yeah, I think you're right, Jacob. Just like has to be.
Well,
I don't think it's not a proposal. I think that's just true.
Well, it depends on what you're looking at, right? So if you're looking at economic decisions, yes, right, because like they share income, right? So
yeah,
to look at it in a different way is silly. Although people separate their incomes now and stuff like that, but yeah, like so what you're looking at determines what's relevant, right? Like, so what's the right frame? Like maybe the city is the right frame in a different situation.
So my idea is, unless you're a married man, you can't vote.
That's how you promote babies.
Yeah.
Oh, how about this? You get the number. The number of votes you get is the number of people in your household.
No. It's the number of children you have, not the number of people in your household. Because the number of people in your household, you say, oh, now we're just going to have everyone in the same house. No.
You know what? I would prefer that. If a lot of people were actually living together, I think our society would be a lot better off than we are.
But that was historically true. It's not atomistic. People think the nuclear family, for some reason, and again, I'm criticizing conservatives again, they think that the nuclear family thing was always existed. And it's like, what are you talking about? That's the thing from like the 1950s. Before, you had massive families. Your family lived under the same roof, as in your grandparents, your uncles, your aunts. Everyone was under the same roof, effectively. Yeah. Or if they weren't, you were seeing them every day.
And our society, I think, was much better off. As someone who, I mean, the whole idea of living with my parents was, as soon as I turned 18, I was like, no way. And that's been the number one thing. I still can't imagine living with my parents. I have started to think, no, I'm making a huge mistake living alone. I would love to find a commune I would be willing to live in.
I could see you in the kibbutz. Yeah.
Not a kibbutz. Oh my God.
I'm making a bad joke here. Sorry.
So Sherry, tell us.
Huh?
Tell us.
What are you trying to solve here? You're trying to figure out how to do a democracy that is fair, or
okay? So
because I missed the last like.
No, he wants to manifest utopia in current conditions.
So this book, Counter Wokecraft, is the closest thing we have for a manual of people who are like, the woke are batshit insane. We don't want to live in this world of craziness.
Right. And
reading it, I noticed that all it is a bunch of like defensive moves on how to stop yourself. It's like, no. We can't just be defensive. We have to define ourselves in a way of having a society which can then not be infected by the insanity that all of us see, right? But how do we do that?
Well, I think that if you had that, you wouldn't have the insanity. It would resolve itself, because you would be. I think that the society that you're thinking about has to be integrated. It has to include everyone, right? Like, so you can't exclude someone on the basis of their thought life, right? Which is what's happening in the world today.
Well, okay, so we spoke about disposable, like not having disposable people, and I agree with you. We can't dispose of people, but we still need to have a hierarchy, because I'm done with all the idiots. I'm just done with them.
Hold on. The Bible is doing that, so like.
Doing what? Disposing of people?
Yeah. Nephilim.
What? Okay, so this is a very
Why are we talking about
Christian
Genesis?
reading. This is a very Christian reading of things, which I won't go there, but I had a huge fight on my Discord server with people who thought that like imposing the death penalty was something that was done in Judaism. It's like, go away.
Historically, most people just went, you go to the hinterlands, goodbye. Like,
so the right to emigrate is important. I think that's one of the things that I personally, and if you read Natan Sharansky's books, one of the things he talks about, a hallmark of a free society is the right to emigrate, not immigrate, emigrate, right? The right to leave. And I believe people should always have the right to leave. That doesn't mean we have to include everyone.
That's actually something that I do not have at the moment.
Well, yes, we realize that Canada is currently being occupied by Castro Jr. But
yeah, actually, this is one of those conspiracy theories. I'm like, yeah, it's true. It has to be.
Justin Castro is in fact leading Canada. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, well, I think you're gonna run in. You're just gonna keep running in. It's like a maze. No, it's like a. What's the difference between a maze and a labyrinth? Which one has dead ends? One of them has dead ends.
Both.
No. I think a maze.
I'm not aware of a real difference between them.
But anyway, you get my drift, right? You have let's say you have a labyrinth.
I think a maze is living, by the way.
If you focus on the particular, you're always gonna end up at a dead end, because you're gonna
you're right. Maze has dead ends. Labyrinth has a single through route with twists and turns, but without branches.
Okay, so the maze. So you're in a maze, right? And if you focus on the particular, you're gonna keep running up against dead ends. You need to be in a labyrinth where you have the twists and the turns, right? You have the dynamism of living with somebody, but there's always a through route. There's an in and there's an out. There's a way, the way, okay? And so I think it has to do with perception, because perception changes everything. Like if you have the right perception of humanity, let's say, and you have a transcendent value, which I think is absolutely necessary, because it cannot be just horizontal, or you lose the big picture, right? If you don't have the transcendent, then all the particulars will iron themselves out, as long as you have that shared, what did I say before that?
Transcendent value.
Transcendent value.
You just, basically what I'm saying is you need the 30,000 foot view, right? In order to get along with each other and not trip up on the particulars, because that's why you don't want to live with your parents, Jacob, because of the particulars, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
but the
but
problem
other
with that,
than
no,
but
no.
isn't the transcendent value just God?
Yes.
Well,
No,
it's
But
the
the
B
same.
is, but A isn't.
Well, it is ultimately, but you could always also call it the sacred, right? And that is present in humanity. So you have to see each other as sacred. That's what I think.
No, I I'm going to disagree, because you need a framework from which to interpret this.
Well,
And
see,
if
that's
you-
where you and I are really going to part ways, because I'm not into frames. I
well,
disagree.
then, but you need to, like
Well,
first
that
of
is your
all,
frame then.
no. The first thing is you cannot, you need to develop the capacity to relate to the transcendent value, right? So that's already the first problem. You're not born with right relationship to God, the capacity, like it's something that you cultivate, right? Like there's a
I think
reason
you
that
are
people go.
actually born with it and you grow out of it. That's what I think.
Oh, that's very
Well,
Rousseauian, Sherry. No.
Sorry.
well, even if you
Come
are, it
on,
doesn't matter because you grow
2-year-olds.
out of it. Like
You've had kids. 2-year-olds are the most violent things. Like you
Yeah, but
train a 2-year-old.
those are the particulars. I would say that an infant and a toddler, I would say it this way: the infant and the toddler do not know who they are. They perceive
yeah, but
themselves
then they
as a
need to
part
learn
of
it.
the world.
So they are
No.
less godly than a mature person.
Let me finish.
Okay.
They participate in being itself. So that's why a toddler can be Batman and Spider-Man, right? Or a bird or a plane. And when he thinks that way, he is that thing, right? He can
No,
be
he
the
thinks he's
water,
that
he can
thing.
be the dog, he can be the tree, he can be actually all those things. And
But
then
he's wrong.
Yeah, and like he's not the thing.
What's
He's
wrong?
his conception of the thing. That's the
I
difference.
think he's participating with life when in that stage of his life. I think that that's what he's doing.
Well,
Oh no, okay.
maybe.
So I think I know where you come from now. So he was saying is he's a child when he's developing, he is acting things out. He's make believe, but he's effectively participating in the symbol of that thing itself. And you say it's like just he's pretending what his conception of it. It's like no, in a sense he understands like the essence of it, and he's participating and acting out and embodying that essence, even if he isn't the thing in itself. Sorry, I'm
But
trying to
he has
understand.
but that's
He
the
doesn't
problem.
rational.
Kids
I'm
have
not saying agree.
flawed
I'm just trying to understand what you're
ideas.
saying.
Okay, let me
Kids have
say it this
very
way.
flawed ideas.
Pardon?
Kids have very flawed ideas.
Sure, they do. Yeah. So this
Yeah,
is
so
this
then
is
they're
this is what I'm
participating with
talking about.
evil, and then they're enacting evil.
What I'm talking about is original participation, withdrawal, and final participation. Original participation is the toddler, the infant, right? Where they don't know who they are. They don't see when they're faced with themselves in the mirror, they don't see that as who they are, right? They know who they are when they're outside in the elements, being whatever it is that their imagination can think of. And then the withdrawal comes when they look in the mirror and they believe that what they are is dying. Okay? That they see what they are. This is the teenager. And this comes from Douglas Harding. Okay, this is not my ideas. And then they go through the identity crisis because to them it's terrifying to believe that what they are is dying. Okay, so the toddler, the baby, they're eternal. They don't know what mortality is. The teenager suddenly realizes they are dying, and the final stage, which I would call final participation in Barfieldian terms, is the sage who integrates the child. Okay, so that person has realized that they are no longer what they look like. They are not dying, right? They are eternal, and they can participate in being with the wisdom that they have learned through their period of withdrawal.
So
and I know
they're wiser, but that maturity imparts a wisdom that they didn't have before.
Sure,
correct?
I'm not saying that the child is perfect, but this to me is what Jesus is talking about when he says you have to become like a little child in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. In order to walk into the kingdom of heaven, you have to be like a child. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean dumb. It means participatory. That's what it means. It means to be, to understand that 30,000 foot view, that you are an integral part of the cosmos and that you are being itself.
So first of all, I don't think you need the 30,000 foot view to have that capacity.
The child doesn't have the view.
No, yeah, but I don't think
who has
an
integrated
adult.
the child.
Yeah, but I don't think, because I don't think we all need to be sages, and I also don't think that in order
aren't.
to be a more integrated person, you need to have that 10,000 foot view. Like you need to have right relationship between what you're talking about, right? Like this ego, and because that's the thing that's trying to preserve itself, and your participation, and I think that's the thing that you're trying to navigate. And
Okay, well, let me ask you this though. Would you describe the teenager classically as someone who is having a meaning crisis?
I
Yes.
think that's actually a pretty new thing. I think we've turned teenagers. See, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I think in the 50s and 60s and 70s, we turned being the rebellious teenager into a sort of idol of what you need to and should be. And frankly, the more I look into actually classical societies, and the more like I look into the science of it, most kids just mimetically become their parents.
Yeah, but they also live shorter lives. So everything is intensified. Like they're getting married at young ages, they're having children, their husbands or their wives.
A good example of this, I'm just thinking now, not just the new thing.
They're not.
Because I'm going to say Romeo and Juliet.
Okay.
Romeo and Juliet, most people, for some reason, misunderstand this story. It's about two randy teenagers who just... sorry, it's a comedy, effectively. It's a tragic comedy, like two horny teenagers, I should say, who just want to just get about, and they fall in love because they just want to hang at each other. And but they also want to go, oh, my family's against each other, why can't we do it? Oh, like this. And then at the end, they're like, oh, well, the only way we can do it is we pretend to die, but we didn't get them, and then it's a tragic thing. So in effect, it's actually a comedy. But many people nowadays think, oh, it's so romantic. I'm thinking, it's not a romance. What are you on about? Have you listened to watched the same play that I was watching? But what I'm saying is that idea is, it isn't a new idea that teenagers want to rebel. Like that's always kind of happened. But the difference is what they're rebelling against usually. In this case, nowadays, it's just the idea of rebelling. Okay, another thing I'm just thinking at the top of my head is the idea of coolness. Do you think the idea of someone who was cool was a common idea 200 years ago? I don't think so, because who do we view as being cool? Well, it's effectively our peers,
just someone to emulate, someone you look up
to. It's not just someone to emulate, but who emulating. Like in the past, the people you would emulate would be your immediate family and immediate like workers. I'm not saying like that, but nowadays it's like, oh, we have idols, like, oh, that person's a cool person. Yeah. Like,
okay, but now we're swimming, or we're getting back into the particulars, right?
I'm
talking in general.
No, I'm trying to be general. I'm trying to say, like, I was trying to talk like Jacob, like the idea of like this rebelliousness of like meaning crisis view of teenagers. I don't think it was necessarily the modern thing.
It has to always be, because the child has to separate themselves from the parent, and they have to know who they are. Now, I think because of the particulars in time, that always looked different, right?
Yeah.
And the school system hasn't helped in any way whatsoever, because it shoves children into a subculture, and they have to struggle with their identity amongst their peers when they should be doing that with adults to emulate, and they don't have any. So that's my take on that. I have a lot of things
And we
to
have
say about
and all of our saints are broken people. We don't have actual saints.
Yeah. So all I'm saying is that Douglas Harding says most people stay teenagers. Most people do.
Yeah.
Because they and I think it and he's not recent. Like, he died a number of years ago. But I think that really does
He died in 2007. I just looked him up.
yeah. I think that's quite descriptive of, well, you could call it a meaning crisis, or an identity crisis, or an intimacy crisis, or a belonging crisis. It's all those things. That's what teenagers struggle with. And
Well, I think identity crisis is the right word. I think meaning
but all
crisis and
those things
intimacy crisis are separate from that.
Yeah, but if you don't know who you are, how can you be intimate? Like, you know,
No,
like
no, no,
everything
no, no. Like,
contingent.
but you no, no. But okay, but identity, right? Like, you can have, you don't have one identity, right? Like, you have multiple identities, and if you're just contesting a subset of your identity, then you have the stability to undergo that transformation. If you're contesting the whole of your identity, then you become trans, right?
So what
So-
if understanding that you have multiple identities is enough? Is that not enough? Instead of trying to find one?
Well, well, then I would argue that instead of trying to find an identity, you're trying to find purpose or calling, right? Like,
Right, that's where the meaning thing comes in, right?
what? But I think that's separate from trying to find your identity.
No,
Well, I
I
don't.
actually think I don't think it's separate either. Because I can remember being a
No.
teenager, and I don't.
You want to know
It
what
wasn't
your
separate.
purpose is, but you don't know because you don't know who you are. How
Yeah.
can you know what your purpose is if you don't know who you are?
Well, because your culture and tradition tells you.
Oh, you clearly didn't get brought up as an atheist, did you? I didn't really have it. What tradition did I have? Oh, yeah, that was a good idea. Like, seriously, like, I was also a weirdo at school, in the sense that I didn't really realize what the groups were, in that sense, because I was a weirdo. I used to just talk to everybody about everything. It was always fun. Like, fine. I didn't realize that there was a cool kids club. I knew the sporty kids because they were the obvious one, but I didn't realize who the cool kids were, who the nerds were, who whatever, all that in that regard. So I used to just talk to everyone, but there were groups and these identities, because people would want to form in these groups. They wanted this culture, their identity, part of that group, because they wanted to belong to something. But then there's this idea of, like, it is like you want this belonging, and that's what happens when you're a teenager, especially when you're going through puberty. Good God, things are happening to you. Like, I can remember going through puberty. It was a flux of emotions, and other hormones and everything. It was not a good time, and you don't know what's going on. You don't know where things are going. You don't know why you're going through this, and you think you're alone in it for some bizarre reason. Not like all your mates are going through it as well, but like you feel like
you are essentially
Yeah.
alone, because it is
Yeah.
your own struggle, right? Like,
Okay.
you can't. Whatever you're going through is, yeah.
I want to ask some questions. Okay.
Yeah.
Is identity something that you can have by yourself without reference to anybody else?
Nope.
Can
Well-
you have just one? Let me ask the questions, and then we'll go around. Can you have overlapping identities, or are identities somehow separate from each other? Do we have some sort of group identity, and do identities wax and wane, right? Am I more Jewish sometimes and less Jewish sometimes? Because frankly, my biggest identity, I would say, is Jew. But and is your identity in different in different groups?
Yeah, so I would argue that an identity is something that you adopt as a consequence of your participation in the world, right? So if I want to pick up my cup, I need to identify as a cup picker, and I need to envision myself in the world as someone capable of picking up the cup and participating in that way. And so and then you go to the idea of adaptation, right? Like, so I have these capacities, right? And the capacities that I have in one way of being, I can start using in different ways, right? So when you're talking about overlapping identities, yes, right? Like I think at a certain point you're combining certain aspects from other identities in order to form right relationship, or the best relationship that you can have.
But what you're describing is an identity that you yourself just it's all in your mind, and I don't think that's where identity is.
No,
No.
it's not in your mind. It's in your relationship.
Relationship,
Right.
but can it be in? But it's in your relationship with other people
Or things, yes.
or things. I don't think
Or
so.
God.
Okay, I just realized where the distinction's happening here and why that's going on. So I think the problem for like a teenager and said a teenager in general, people, is not their identity, but what determines their identity. I think that's the crux of it. Many people want to make themselves unique. They made to determine what they want to be as a person, but they went, "Oh, I don't want to have," but then they confuse this with the concept of identity. It's like, my identity is like, I'm a brother to my sister, I am a son to my father, I am a neighbor to my neighbor. But these identities I never chose. They are kind of not, they are just there. They are already pre-existing. But the people who said, no, I want to be a rock star, or I want to be a bricklayer, or I want to be baking down the road some bread or something. I don't know. Like, these are different goals and aspirations to be what kind of person you want to be. But the thing is, they choose that as an identity. Like, no, my identity is now to be this. And it's like, you don't choose that identity.
Before I lose my train of thought and you talk too much. I go too far away from where I wanted to.
You talk too much, Jen.
I just want to address a couple things that you said, because we know that we aren't what we do. Okay, so I don't think that bricklayer or accountant is an identity. It's a job for most people. People will readily tell you that that's not who they are, right? And I think that identity is, I see identity, a person's, what we're talking about is personhood, okay? So I think that what we, the way I see personhood is like a diamond that is cut, and it's many faceted on all sides. And so there are parts of the diamond that we can see, but there are also parts of the diamond that we can't see, right? So if you ask a friend or a family member to describe you to you, they will identify a person that you don't really know, okay? Because they can see all aspects of that diamond. They have the 360-degree view of that diamond, right? And you only
No, they
have
don't.
a certain...
No, I would disagree with that.
Let me
They do have a
finish.
different view. Yeah.
Let me finish. And as for overlapping identities, if you think about it, you are multiple personalities, okay? You have the capability to be Jacob in the synagogue, Jacob on the Discord, Jacob with his parents, Jacob with his sister, Jacob with a friend, Jacob with a lover, Jacob in the pet store. Like, it's never ending, okay? And if you really concentrate on that, you realize that you are multiple personalities, okay? All your interactions. So what is personhood? I think that personhood is the vehicle through which we become what we are meant to be. And it is through relationship to things and other people that we are shaped.
What are we meant to be?
God knows that. That's what God
So-
knows. And I say all this because the Bible says, one day you will know as you are known. Okay? So there is an element to us, we are a mystery to ourselves, right? And in Revelation, it talks about the white stone name that God will write on a stone and put it on your forehead. And when he puts it there, you will say, oh, of course that's who I am. Because that is the question we're always asking. Who am I?
Well, this is from 1 Corinthians 13, so I'm going to have to reject it. Ginger Bill, you were saying.
No, I wasn't. I don't disagree with you were saying there, Sherry, but it was more like a good point you said there is, for me, this is probably completely, none of you are going to know this, but there was a kids' books. They were called the Mr. Ben books, if you know what they are. Where Mr. Ben would go out and he'd put a different hat on, a different suit, and he'd go do a different job, and it'd be different things. Like, for instance, he'd normally have his bowler hat on, but sometimes he'd put like a gladiator hat and he'd become a gladiator, he'd put a different chef hat and he'd become a chef. And I still conceptualize this in my head, literally. I put a different hat on to do a different job.
Yes.
It's always very helped me to do this.
Absolutely.
Because to me, it's like, okay, I'm in this role, I'll do this. Like, for instance, I had a meeting with a bank the other day. Unfortunately, it was over the bleeming video. But you know what? I dressed up in a suit. I wore my right proper shoes and everything as well. Even though it was over this camera, I dressed up correctly.
You
Why?
wore pants while on camera? Why would you
Yeah,
do that?
and I had proper brogued shoes on as well and everything. I am this kind of person. I dress up to
He's
do the thing.
compensating here.
Well, you
No,
might as well
actually,
know if
because
I'm
you
on video, I'm
embody
not
that.
wearing pants.
When you are embodying something,
Yeah.
that is communicated. Like most of our language is not spoken. It's our body language. That's why.
And I
Peterson
think that's
was
part
saying-
of the problem we have with the internet, actually.
Yeah,
That's why we're not communicating.
Oh, I always
Well,
complain
no.
when I'm saying like text is an awful format. Like I was discussing with someone on the Bridges Mean Discord, and the short answer just went, God, I hate text as a medium because it's like we're not communicating properly because either you're reading in something to I've written or I've read something into your written, which neither of us meant, and it's just, I hate it. Like, 'cause especially when we're speaking, at least over the internet like this, I can stop and think, oh, what did you mean by that? Or, oh, what's that? And then hear the tone of your voice, I can change it. Like, at least this
Mhm.
is a good simulacra to like real life.
A
I'm just
lot of
hoping
people
that you
don't
guys are
even
all working.
read. Like,
No, they don't.
I type really. You've noticed I type forever, and like most people, I'm sure 90% of what I write gets read by nobody other than me.
I read some of it, not all of it, but some of it.
So yeah, I want to bind a couple things together. So I
Yeah.
think a person is a nexus of potentiality, right? So it's not an actuality.
Mhm.
And then
That's true.
also I think when you start identifying with something other than that you're participating, you're making a transgression, right? Like so what you could say, this is my telos, right? But you can't assume the identity, because like I feel that there's
Yeah.
something wrong because you don't know what the telos is, and if you start assuming the identity,
No.
you're gonna ossify the telos, and you're gonna misguide yourself.
But you have to be something because you have to act in the world, right? So
Yeah,
how do you
but
do
it's
that
the
without-
shining light that's drawing you in, right? Like that's you're relating to the shining light.
Okay, we've been at this for 2 hours. We've defined absolutely nothing as to who we are.
Wonderful. I love it.
Well, that's
No,
why one
Well-
day you will know you are known.
No,
Jacob.
you're what's capable of doing this, right? And you're regulating with whatever agency you have your relationship to these things. That's who you are, and
But
if,
I want to define this relationship in a way that I can recruit people. I can have people say, "Oh, this is something I agree with," and then I won't be left just trying to figure out who am I trying to fight against.
Right.
Because if your definition of yourself is parasitic on who they are, then you're not a complete person. You're just going to fall apart.
Yeah.
right, so multivariate dynamic system. There you go.
Multivariate.
You have to take a course and get a degree. I would just say love, Jacob.
But
That's what
the
I would
woke
say.
claim
You have
they
to
love. But
your
the
enemy.
No, but
And you have to
claim that they are the most loving. They are the inclusive. They are the diverse.
no, but love as an organizing principle. I think that's the important part.
Define
Right?
love.
Yes.
Can you love
Yeah.
yourself?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's getting.
No. I'm going to explain what I mean by this.
Oh,
Right.
this is going to be really terrible.
So when I say yes, you can, and I don't mean this in a rude sense or any of this sense. I'm not doing the crudeness jokes right now. The thing is, let's say you're being selfish and you're trying to be like really egotistical and stuff. What would you do if you were trying to actually have the best for yourself? Yeah? Seriously, what would you do if you really wanted the best for yourself? You try and find out, okay, what would I do if I loved me? Like,
Right.
You die to
literally.
yourself.
Sorry, say that again?
You die to yourself.
In a not necessarily. So what I mean is,
You might
if
have
you
to.
you might have to, yes, but not necessarily. That's why I mean that. So I'm trying to figure out how to
Well,
phrase
that's what
this.
you do when you adopt a different identity. Right? You die.
I know what
I
you're
don't
doing.
know.
I know what you're talking about, Bill. You're talking about having compassion for yourself as you would for someone else, and that is something that
Yes.
we're not good at, right?
No. Yeah.
We are our own worst critic, and so we tend to be much harder on ourselves than we would be on someone in the same position who's outside of ourselves, right? And this is definitely something that we have to learn. What is this?
Okay.
Yeah, so I
So-
recommended this video earlier on the Discord. It's actually a really good video in general, like, but I know which part you just did. It's quite funny.
What does it mean to say that God knows and loves, right? And well, basically what it means to say that God knows and loves, the thing that God knows and loves, that it's aimed at himself, right? So what does God know when he knows? Well, he doesn't know like the world. The thing that God knows most is himself, right? That's the object that's adequate to his thinking. So what does God think about? He thinks about himself, right? And what does God love? Well, God loves himself. Those are the objects that are adequate to him. What does it mean?
What a brilliant representation of divine narcissism. I know, I loved it. Yeah.
And solipsism. Because honestly, as far as I'm concerned,
you know what?
This is the perfect representation of how the Trinity leads you to postmodernism and wokeism. Because all being woke is,
you know what that man's name
is knowing yourself and loving yourself, which is the Trinitarian view of God, that God knows himself and God loves himself. It is pure evil.
The Trinitarian view of that in my opinion is actually what you described, Jacob, is more of a Calvinist view of God. But I would say that the Trinitarian understanding of God is that of a family. And that comes from Judaism, from a man and a wife and a child.
That's okay. So God, man, wife, children, to some extent, that is a Jewish view of God. I don't think that's how Christians view the Trinity, especially because they never
know they
include
don't.
a female in there. They never include the feminine in God, which is a huge problem. And
Which,
but
which is not necessarily
what bothers me is the definition of love, because the Hebrew definition of love is to give, and you can't give to yourself.
Hey, I give myself
You
some
can
good presents from
actually-
time to time. What are you talking about?
You actually can give to yourself. This is what compassion is.
I don't think
I
so.
argue with that.
I don't think so. I think that's part of why, Jordan Peterson has that rule: treat yourself like someone you're responsible for taking care of. And I think, in essence, recognizing that I am not my own, that I belong to God, and I belong to everything else, is what allows you to give to yourself. Is
Right.
In understanding that when I take care of myself, I am taking care of my mother's son and my sister's brother and my nephew's uncle, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's why that this whole self-contained, what's called the economic trinity. Like I did a whole video. Is the Trinity love? Guess what the answer is? No. And that's what bothered me so much about what he was talking about. And look, isn't wokeism like the whole idea behind the woke and their auto ethnographies, right? My experience is what matters. What I know is what matters, right? The more I think about it, the more clearly I see that 1 = 3 will inevitably end you up with 2 + 2 = 5. The
Jacob,
wokeism is the inevitable result of the Trinity.
Right. Okay. What have you know? Do you know the Alan Watts view on the Trinity? Basically, I know we don't want to go through Trinity discussions, but the Alan Watts view
I
is
don't
that
really want to talk about Trinity because
I don't care about
what
Trinity.
Jacob's
All I'm
talking
saying
about
is
the birth
he
of
just
the
thinks of it as
Trinity.
like subject, object, verb, effectively. That's all. And it's just like a quirk of language.
Alan Wilson Watts,
No.
English writer from 1938.
No,
No, Alan Watts, as in that the mystic person. What's his name?
Okay,
Alan
so
Watts,
my conception of love, where I settled on, is like consummation. But
yes.
yeah, it's partaking in something bigger than you, and making it better by your participation.
It's
right?
the
So
union
there's
of. I would say it like this: it's the union of the human and the divine will, and out of that emerges a miracle, and that is
right. Yeah.
a man and
Lovely.
a wife and a child.
I agree with you, but that's not
That is
not what he was talking about in that
No, it is
video.
not. And I agree with you that that version of the Trinity is blasphemous at best.
And it's also stupid, right? Because like am I God, right? Am I not separate from God? Like am I not my own person? Because if I'm not separate from God, like how do I have free will? Like there
Well, see,
has
this
to
is
be.
what I was going to ask Jacob. When can you to love yourself, which I know why it bothers you because of the way that it's bastardized, really. But to love yourself properly, let's say there's a way to do that. Is it possible to discover God because you are the image, right? You have the breath of God in you.
So that's the thing. So in my view, the image of God is a man and wife. You cannot, as an individual human being, be the image of God.
Right,
It's
which
impossible.
is okay. So let's run with that then, because what that says to me is that in order to know yourself, you have to be in relationship, which is what we were talking about before with personhood.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why I brought this up, because that's his point. Grim, jump on, please.
Come on, Graham. Come on.
I gave him the link a long time ago, but that video, right? What his point is, and Bill will correct me if I'm misrepresenting him, is that the only proper subject of God's knowledge and love is himself, not human beings, not the world, not anything else.
Yeah, I would say the rest of the video is pretty good. It's just when he was in certain aspects, like this bit, there's another bit as well further on, which is
but that's quite telling, though. You know, I wanted to mention this. Do you know what his name means? Father Todleben. You know what that translates? Father Dead Life. Dead Life.
Oh wow.
Todleben. Okay, yeah. In Yiddish, that's the same thing. Tot means dead, and Leben means life. Yeah.
Leben. Yeah. That's kind of appropriate.
Okay, so we've decided that the Roman Catholic Church is pure heresy. Okay.
No, but specifically.
I want to add something, right? Like in order to see a thing, you need contrast, right? So in order to see yourself, right, or you have to be in relationship to something, because else there's nothing to observe. Like,
right, this is the question I was about to ask. Do you consider your past self to be you still?
You can't.
No.
I don't even know.
There we go. No, there's a reason as to why I said that, because this is why when you say you can love yourself, because what are you saying? What's the distinction? I talk about this myself. I speak this daily. I say past Bill and future Bill and present Bill. I literally speak in those terms like, oh, stupid past Bill, he made stupid mistake. Oh, thank goodness, past Bill, you were well at planning in advance. And I will literally speak like this, even to colleagues. I'm like going, yes, past Bill, he was absolutely stupid. Why did he ever do this? But the thing is, I'm like, I am talking about, okay, I am planning. I'm trying to say, okay, I'm looking at past Bill and I'm saying, okay, how could I improve him so that when I look at future Bill, he is someone I could admire?
Okay, so this reminds me of something I read on the Chabad website, and there is a I can't remember who wrote it. It was a rabbi, but he talked about Shabbat, and he talked about meeting your additional soul on the Shabbat. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, okay, there's an additional soul you receive on the Sabbath.
Mm-hmm. So tell us more about that, Jacob.
Okay, so you have to realize this is another thing that kind of got me about that video is he talks about the simplicity of the soul, and the Jewish concept of soul is really, really complex.
Layered.
Like when I try to explain to people that, like, so there's this soul that's like this oversoul that's considered shared by all Jews. That's like one soul we all share, and
like a group soul.
What? Yeah, and that I, as a man, have my half of a soul, which my wife is out there somewhere, who has the other half of my soul, and until we are married, we're not really considered. Like this is what it says in Shulchan Aruch. Until a man is married, he's not considered a human being. Right? Same thing by a woman. And so there are various levels of soul. There are various types of soul, various components of soul. And one of the things about the Sabbath is that on that day, we gain a certain view of how life will be on the day when everything will be Sabbath, which is the coming of the Messiah. When and in that sense, on the Sabbath, you gain an additional soul, right?
You can encounter it, though, right? You can actually encounter it. That, from what I read, like it's not that you just.
I'm not sure what you read. I would have to take a look at it and see,
I'll have to find
especially because it's, in translation. But yeah, I mean, this concept of soul, that guy, the dead life, Father Dead Life, was talking about, where it's simple, right? It just makes so little sense to me, because I
Yes.
notice that within myself I am conflicted, right? And so the Jewish concept of having various parts of your soul which are conflicted upon themselves and compounded, and that just makes so much more sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with, like, for one thing, please tell me if I'm wrong, because I probably have misunderstood it.
You're
For
wrong.
instance, like, I'm probably wrong, but I was going to say Jewish conception of afterlife
Mhm.
is very, very different to the Christian one.
Well,
the fact
first and
that,
foremost, it's
yeah,
physical.
yes, yeah,
Like we talk about the world to come and bodily resurrection, and this is actually something. I mean, the new
wait,
perspectives. Oh,
wait,
yeah.
because what I understand is the actual Orthodox position. I mean, in Orthodox, I mean, like, also like proper traditional position on the Christian afterlife is that you are resurrected into your new body and in the union of the new earth and the new heaven, right? That's the Christian view, the proper
So,
one.
yes, and so this is the thing. Over the past 50, 60 years, Christianity has changed a lot. All of
Yes.
Christianity has
Yeah.
changed a lot. And part of the problem is that Christians don't actually talk about this and acknowledge it. And so what I have found is that there's a lot of Christians who have no clue, even if they've been catechized very well, right? They still have no clue that, like, 80 years ago, and I think this is especially true of a lot of the new ortho bros, like, they think that if they go to Mount Athos today and talk to one of the monks in Greek, that monk in Greek is going to be talking to them like Jonathan Pajot and Father Stephen does. And it's like, no, that monk who speaks Greek and has been living in Mount Athos is probably somebody who has not read nearly as much as you have, and has spent his entire life just contemplating what he understands of a very small number of texts, and you're pouring into him everything that you've heard from Jonathan Pajot and Father Stephen, and all of these things that just aren't real in a very granular sense if you go to your local Eastern Orthodox church, especially if it's not Father Stephen's Eastern Orthodox church.
Actually, I
right?
think if you met a monk from Mount Athos, he'd be a lot weirder than you would.
He would be a lot what?
He'd be a lot weirder than you
Than
would
Father
prefer.
Stephen?
Oh yeah. So
I
wanna
mean,
just
meeting a monk in
touch back-
general is weird. Like, I know a few monks. They're weird.
I just wanted to touch back on that additional soul thing, because there's a
Okay.
in one of my catechism classes, actually, someone asked about guardian angels, and the priest said, just briefly, he just scooted right over it, but he said it,
Mm-hmm.
that you are your guardian angel. and I think that maps onto the additional soul in Judaism a lot.
You are your
Actually.
guardian angel.
I'm not a.
Yeah.
You are your.
Well,
Go ahead,
you
Manny.
should identify with your guardian angel. That's maybe a better way.
Well, it's future Bill, essentially. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, I love it now. I've got my terms: future Bill, past Bill, present Bill. Bring it now.
But what's a guardian angel, right? Like it's
More
what
importantly, is future Bill gray or still ginger?
he will be either
he
no,
will
it
be
will
the
either
white.
be purely white or brown, and that may be confusing because I've got my granddad's genes. Effectively, I look like splitting image of my granddad. I even had the balding patch the same way. He's got brown hair and he's in his 80s, so I may not go actually grey. Either way, I'm not going to go grey. I'm either going to go white or brown. Yeah. So I'm either
White
going to Father
Bill.
Christmas or my
Let me tell
granddad.
you, redheads, I've got lots of them in my family. They go white.
Yeah, no, my granddad's the exception. This is the thing. I'm literally the spitting image of him. I've got the same ginger hair, everything, same bowling pants, everything else, same big ears and big nose. He has gone brown, and it's like I also knew another person in my family, and he went brown hair, and he died at the age of 99.
That's
It was the
weird.
best thing. Yeah, it was really proud.
Are
Like,
you sure it's not just for men?
Yeah,
no.
right.
Truly, it is just genetics. We're
Creation
genetics.
formula, remember that?
Yeah.
So okay, so I think this idea of this other soul is you need to be drawn out of yourself, right? And when you're you, just you, solipsistic you, you're not going to do that, right? So
Well, do you think it's something like, Manuel, do you think it's something like Peterson when he says, sit on the edge of your bed and ask the question and you'll get an answer?
no,
Yeah, that is terrifying,
no.
by the way. I've done that before.
Have you gotten an answer?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, you did.
Not good. It was terrifying. What are you talking about? Just don't do that. What are you talking about? I've done it twice.
Like,
I've done it more than twice, actually. But the 2 times, the first time ever in my life, got an answer. Second time, I got an answer. And they were about like a month apart.
And you still think of yourself as an atheist?
No.
Okay, good.
I've been an atheist for a while. This way, I don't like it. Let's put it this way: I don't like that. What my beliefs are now is terrifying. That's all I'm going to say. Is anyone who believes in God, I'm like, how could you not believe this is terrifying?
It is good. You should be terrified.
I don't understand why people aren't. That's what I don't understand.
Because
Reshit Chochma Yirat Hashem. The beginning of wisdom is fear of God, and anybody who has no fear of God has no wisdom. You can be sure of that. Anybody who has no fear of God has no wisdom.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing, Jacob. The awe of God in Hebrew, it's the awe of God is the beginning of wisdom, and departing from evil brings understanding. Yeah, which is really
right, but faith
deep.
Can bring acceptance.
Okay, speaking of Judaism, I am going to be leaving in about half an hour for a bat mitzvah. All of you are invited if you want to come to Los Angeles. I'm joking. You're not.
I mean, I could probably get there. It's all right.
And Grimm, who claims that he's going to come on after he's done feeding his addictions. I wonder which one those are.
He has really big addictions. He needs a lot of feeding.
Says, not all children are divine will. Yes, all children are, in fact, divine will. Okay.
Yeah.
In the next half an hour, I want you guys to help me define who we are.
Well,
children of God. That's who we are.
That's who we are? Is that who the 4 of us here are?
Yes, that is it. We are all children.
How does that exclude the woke NPC?
It doesn't.
Then
no.
Right. Okay. I'm going to do this in 20 seconds. Okay.
Okay.
Solve it. Go.
Right. We are interested in actually asking, like, we are interested in a kind of a meaning crisis. Not necessarily we've been through it, but we're actually questioning it. We're questioning the actual culture that we're in. Questioning and actually observing that culture as well, observing what is up with the world now, what are people doing, why are they doing what they're doing, and being interested in that. We are interested in what is the fundamental aspects of culture, which is clearly religion, and how that manifests in itself. We are interested in having conversations with people to find out this in itself.
So we're curious.
More than but curious about a specific thing in itself.
Driven.
We're seekers.
Driven.
We are seekers of God.
Yes.
Not necessarily God, but necessarily.
Well, ultimately, yes.
Ultimately, yes, but not necessarily. What I'm saying, we're ultimately that. But what I meant is, we are driven first to understand what is going wrong with everything else out there.
So this is one of the things that I considered doing before I gave up, and I said, you know what, I just need to start a conversation and invite smart people to join me, was first of all saying that John Vervaeke's post-nominalist Neoplatonism has to stop with the non-theism and start recognizing that that what unites us is at the very least a belief in Spinoza's God, that there is an Irenic God out there that that we have to recognize.
Did you watch his conversation today by any chance with the?
Not today, no.
Okay, he did a live stream and I watched it while it was live streaming. It was really, really good. He talked
Was
about.
it by himself?
No, it was a conversation with a guy. I can't remember his name now, right offhand. But anyway, he actually said we need to dig into Spinoza during that thing, okay? And I keep asking myself the question, when he talks about theism, is he actually talking about deism?
That's
Yes.
I actually thought of that. That
Yeah.
possibly what we have to say is you may be a non-theist in terms of the agentic God, but at the very least you have to be a deist. His conversation was with Rich Blundell. I have
Mhm.
no idea who this Rich Blundell guy is.
Rich Blundell. This is the second one apparently. I never saw the first one, but it was really good.
This is okay. So when you're talking about, like, for me, I'll be very careful how I phrase this. I put things into 3 different categories in my head about how I view theism, non-theism, and atheism. Right? Atheism in my head is specifically, it's just reductive physicalism. That's it. It's just, or materialism for short. That is what atheism fundamentally is.
And it's definitely wrong.
And it's definitely wrong. Oh, it's definitely wrong. In fact, it contradicts itself. It's fundamentally contradictory wrong. Non-theism to me is everything else, which is still it's naturalism, but there is still this wooiness. Yes, I mean, this is how I'm defining it. There is still there's woo. But what this means is that, for instance, the pagans, the polytheists, the pantheists, the animists, these are all still non-theists in my viewport, because the thing is the idea that this is the whole show. This is the entire thing. Everything that happens within nature. For instance, the polytheists would view that the gods are either anthropomorphized or just they are things within the world. They act within the world. They are part of the world. They're not separate from it. They don't transcend it. They are in that world. So this is kind of what my view of non-theism is. And then you've got theism, which would mean there is a transcendent element with an emanation element as well that emanates down. So you have this, effectively, this would have all the monotheists in there. You'd also have the dualists in there. For instance, like the Zoroastrian, I can never pronounce it. Zoroastrians. I can never pronounce the damn word. I only have to read it. They would have been there. So that would couple that. So you'd have this transcendent element to it. And that's the way I view the same things. So for instance, deism would be in there as well. Deism would be in the theism category, but it would be inert. It'd be an inert thing.
I think I kind of think that that's what John Vervaeke is talking about, but he's calling it non-theism.
I think he is a deist. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like the creator that just creates and walks away, right? Like that. There's this.
Well, that's the problem. Okay, so that characterization of deism, which is the classic definition of deism, is not Spinoza's God, is not Vervaeke's God.
Not at all.
What they are doing is, in fact, taking what Paul calls God number one, right? Which is Jordan Peterson's absolute minimal God. That if you are looking at the Abrahamic God, right? The Abrahamic God that is ineffable, the primary cause, then that definitely exists. You have to recognize this Neoplatonic concept of the one that is the totality of all being.
I'd be very careful there. I don't go to the full-on Neoplatonic. I would literally keep this as a God is the thing which acts. I think it's the thing. I think what Jordan Peterson did in the Sam Harris discussion was actually a very good listing of how he would just do the Irenic God. God in this sense as Mother Nature. So, and I wouldn't go any further than that in that definition. So the Spinozan thing is that the universe itself is the same as God. The universe, the world, reality is divinity in itself.
Yeah,
divinity
that's
isn't.
A problem.
That's what the Spinozan viewpoint is. For, I would say, the deist viewpoint is that God is divine in the fact that he created the world, but in that sense, divinity does not permeate the world. There is no more divinity in the world. So that's my view of divinity. In that case, it's in deism. Because if you look at all the famous deists, in fact, pretty much everyone in the 18th century was a deist. All the fancy people, all the American
the smart
founders,
ones.
they were all
All the
deists.
smart ones.
All the smart people, yeah. Isaac Newton was a deist, effectively, and a Unitarian as well. Interesting weird. He was a weird chap. If you want to read much about his history, most of his stuff was theology. But yeah,
Wait. Is
Was
there
Newton married?
non-Unitarian?
Newton was not married. He died unmarried.
See, I think that's part of what causes problems. I think a man who is not married cannot properly think. And yes, I'm speaking as an unmarried man.
I'm just gonna say, what are you doing?
No, seriously. I think having I think
You
I
just
think
negated
the
everything you guys-
basic unit I think the basic unit of humanity is man and woman. I think if we think of biologically what is an actual human being, I think a human being is a mated male female couple. I think that's actually true.
Yeah, and so I think what you're trying to describe is someone who has developed the capacity for intimacy.
And is intimate with somebody of the opposite gender. Because honestly, no, I think it's
I agree,
really I think it is incredibly important to recognize the difference between men and women and the wholeness that comes from a man and woman who are in fact functional in a biological sense.
Well, this is the whole interesting part about the coincidence of opposites that McGilchrist talks about, right? Because that's essentially what masculine and feminine are. And you know, he posits that they are complementary to each other, right? That they need each other, and that the tension that they create, and this is how I like to see it, the tension they create is what transcends, is what you transcend on. Okay, so, and I like to compare it to Christ walking on the water, right? Because you have you know, good and evil, chaos and order, you know, you have all these dualities, right? These opposites. And when you try to reconcile them, you create a tension. And on that tension, you can transcend on it. And this is what walking on the water was. And when you focus on the multiplicity, the particular, you fall into chaos, right? Into the water. And so the idea of the masculine and feminine being the perfect human being, I agree with that. It's just to me, another illustration of the necessity to understand the function or the utility of opposites.
Yeah,
we sometimes want to just sweep them away as paradoxes, right? We put them in the paradox broom closet and say, don't get it. But I think that if you guys haven't seen the Ralston College lecture on the coincidence of opposites by Ian McGilchrist, you should really watch it, because he does a fantastic job of showing how that is the duality within non-duality, basically. So the coincidence of opposites.
I don't like the word opposite, because I don't think they're opposite.
Complementary.
Well, that's his point.
Yeah, they're complementary and they're interdependent.
But we see them as dualities, right? We see black and white. We see, you know, death and life. Yeah. We see good and evil.
Right, but those are also not opposites.
Of course not. I agree.
Okay, well, yeah. but it's important. Yeah. So yeah, right. Like if you think of them as opposites, you get into bad places, right? Like good and bad are also not opposites.
Yeah, we've come into a lot of different problems because I think our metaphysical framing is poor. And not to be a broken record, but I blame the Trinity.
No.
You blame the
Metaphysical is poor
perverted
because
version.
my metaphysical
I'm
thing is
gonna say it
perfect.
that
What are you talking about? My framing is the best because I'm not a Trinitarian. I'm not Christian. So there's the solution.
I think Neoplatonism is actually the way we have to eventually go,
This is
and
pretty cool.
that's why I called this post-Platonism, because I do think Vervaeke is right when he says that the proper he calls himself a post-nominalist Neoplatonist. And I just think we need a better name and a good definition, but I think he's got it.
So I don't think in his system the good can exist.
You don't think in his system the good can exist?
Yep.
I think you need to study more Neoplatonism.
Well, you
Well,
can call it all you
we
want,
should
but I
schedule another
don't think it can
conversation.
exist in his system.
Well, the
Actually,
thing with
Mongo, I
Neoplatonism,
have it.
yeah, the problem with Neoplatonism that I've discovered is the generic concept of Neoplatonism just doesn't work. You have to, in fact, pick a species of Neoplatonism.
Okay.
Actual Plotinus himself, I haven't read Plotinus himself. Is it good?
But-
You've muted yourself.
It actually is okay. Yeah, Plotinus
It's
is actually not bad.
okay.
When I say okay, it was hard to read. But it
It-
was actually good. It was good, but it was hard to read. It wasn't
But
easy.
wasn't he a Christian?
No,
He was. No, he wasn't.
he was
Oh,
not. He was not. Okay,
No,
but I just want to say one thing because I have to go.
yeah. Go ahead.
I need to go, but I wanted to say to Manuel, I share. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I share your. I only have an intuition about it, but I share your trepidation about the good in Vervaeke's system, and it would be nice to talk about that one time.
Okay.
I'd love to talk about it because I
Yeah.
have a bunch to say about it. But yeah, like so the reason that I say that the good can't be in there is because you need the framing, and I don't think Neoplatonism is providing the framing to hold the good, right? Like that's in the Bible, like that's where the framing of the good is, and if you don't, or in Buddhism maybe, but you need the structure
There
to
is no
live
good. I don't think
Right,
that
so-
Buddhism. Yeah.
So
doesn't-
I think
Yeah,
I think we may actually be saying the same thing, because what I have found is this abstracted Neoplatonism where you talk about Neoplatonism in its abstract, almost Platonic form. It is not sufficiently concrete for human beings to relate to them. And that's why I say you have to pick a particular flavor of Neoplatonism. Of course, being the best being Judaism, but
or Christianity.
but
or
okay.
Islam.
No. I'm just going full on to Plotinus. Look, if you're going to go for the Neoplatonist, you go to the source, man. Come on.
I don't believe he's the source. That's the problem.
No, he's not the source. No, I agree as well.
But the question is, right, like, okay, so if we're in agreement that the good isn't in Neoplatonism but in the implementation, then are we still
What?
talking about the same good when we have the different traditions of Neoplatonism? Like I don't believe so.
Well, I'm confused by what you're saying there. Sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. Like, are you saying that Neoplatonism cannot have the good in it?
Yes.
Then you haven't read any Neoplatonism.
No, like
see that
they just say that it's the good, but there's no way to reach it.
What? You don't what?
I think what he's saying, as I understand Saint Emmanuel, and it's very difficult to understand saints, is that the Platonic ideal of Neoplatonism, this abstracted idea that is Neoplatonism, abstracted from say Islam, Judaism, or Christianity, cannot provide the container for the good. It cannot receive. It cannot be a vessel of goodness.
Okay, so there,
Okay.
what you're saying, Manuel, then, is that the good is not incarnated in Neoplatonism.
What is not
or
incarnated?
embodied in Neoplatonism.
I don't think
It's not
Neoplatonism can embody anything.
There is
like
no incarnate good in
Yes.
Neoplatonism, right?
Yes.
It's just kind of floating around. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
I understand now.
It's too abstract.
I wouldn't say that's true. I wouldn't say that's true. So from what I understand, and I'm probably wrong. I'm just saying I'm wrong already, but let's carry on with my wrong view.
I'm listening.
It's the idea is that it's the participation of goodness in the world. It's not necessarily incarnate, but it participates with you. You are good in itself. Things are good, and it's that emanation with your
it
up
will
there.
just,
And now you don't have discernment.
it'll just become arbitrary, I think, Bill. Because then it'll be postmodern, like all over the place.
Yep.
It'll be whatever you deem good.
Well, okay, let's go to my own personal views now. Screw Neoplatonism for the time being. My view is I don't think it is arbitrary. Clearly, you've got intuition of what is the good. And hello, Grim. Hello.
Hey.
No, and you've got intuition of how you doing anyway.
Well, I just came in from Mount Athos because
Oh, of course. How are the monks doing?
they're high.
Wow.
Jacob, Jacob
Well,
set an
Mount
agenda
Athos is fun, isn't
while
it?
I was watching that he wants to know what we are in this group, and I'll include myself for shits and giggles. It's for some reason this is a group of people trying to F the ineffable. And to that I say, what the F? Why the F are you trying to F the ineffable?
Because
Is
I
it for
wanna.
is it good times? Is it intellectual stimulating rigorously?
Masturbation is not allowed by God, so we need to find different ways to do
It's
it.
clearly allowed by God. He may
No,
look down upon
no.
it and punish you for it, but it's definitely allowed.
Yeah, it's physically possible. There's nothing stopping you, unless you've got no arms or
Allowed.
something, and then you've got to do all the fine other means.
Yeah, this is one thing where present Jacob very much disagrees with past Jacob. Yeah. God doesn't like masturbation, and I thought he did.
No, that was you.
Go forth and multiply.
I
not
was a
go forth and
teenager.
spill your seed into fallow ground. Some seed falls in the fallow ground. Some
Okay,
seed
guys, I'm taking my leave.
Now she's out. Oh,
Sherry's had
Mr.
enough of
Rowe.
this masculinity.
Peterson.
Bye.
Bye.
Now we're incomplete.
But
We are.
Bill,
I'm missing a
Bill,
rib
Bill.
all of a sudden.
No.
When
Who are
you're
you?
talking about clearly we have a sense of the good, I'm just going to invoke Tom Holland, right? Like you're living in a Christian society, and like the fact that you can see good just means that you inherited some Christian
No, so
conception.
I'm actually going full on common sense tradition here. So I'll explain what I mean by this. So how do you know if something is good?
You don't.
You do. Yes,
No,
you do.
you do. That's the
You
thing.
do.
You do.
You do. How do you know? You have this intuition of the goodness, and I mean an intellectual seeming is the technical term for it. That's what I mean by that. You actually seem that you know this is what it's true. This is how we come to believe anything. We seem that it seems right, but we have this intuition about what is the good thing. Now we may not know particulars. We may not know certain things because we may actually be influenced by other things. But we have an intuition. Like we have an intuition about many different things, not just goodness. We have an intuition about beauty. We have an intuition of like what we're seeing things. Now, when I say intuition, I do not mean heuristic. I do not mean an evolutionary evolved thing. I mean, like, how do you know like something is actually true? Well, I have an intuition about it. So that's what I mean. That is it's just common sense. Like literally, I mean that in the actual technical sense.
No, I'm
like,
not buying it.
But
if you're not buying it,
fun.
that's
You
how
can
you come
be
to believe
wrong,
anything.
though. but that's the problem, Bill. You can
Of
think
course you can be
something
wrong.
is good and you can be wrong.
Oh no! I don't say think. It's a
He says
very particular thing there.
intuition,
No,
which
no, no.
is
You
like
can have an
inner
intuition that
tuition.
something is right and still be wrong. Like 13-year-old me with masturbation.
No,
Yeah,
no,
like-
but
like
the thing
that's-
is, you are
that's-
still using intuition to use something else. So you've still got a fundamental intuition about things. And I'm not saying that intuition is right or wrong, but it's the way you perceive things. In a sense,
Yeah,
call it a
but
moral
it's
sense.
necessary.
Call it a
Yes.
sense, then.
But intuition is necessary, but it's not sufficient. So it's like useless.
No. Okay, so
It's not
another way-
useless.
Inner
no, it's not
tuition
useless.
is
Okay, let's do another
useless.
way of putting this. You've got eyes, you can see, correct? Yeah?
Mm.
You can perceive things which are wrong. Your senses can blind you, but you still are able to see. Yes? And you are able to interpret this and intuit what you are seeing. Yes? From your sense of sight. Your
Maybe.
intuition of your intuition of it is separate from your sense. Right?
Not really.
Yes.
You're becoming way too Cartesian for me.
No, I'm not being Cartesian. Wait, I'm actually being too Aristotle here. This is the problem.
Okay.
Aristotelian. I mean, too Aristotelian here.
I don't think you can separate the intuition from the sense.
I think your emotions are at play and completely foreign, but that's where the response of your internal barometer emotionally is where the intuition of what's good and evil comes from. Because
Yeah,
like
it's the contrast. Yeah.
if you witness and or participate in something that is evil, you will feel it. You might not be able to like intuit it, but you will feel the evil of it while you're doing it usually, and you can push that aside to keep doing it. But it's like, how do I know a soul exists? Because of the part that hurts.
But
That's
even then, not always. Like I'm also going to say that's not reliable.
It's not
reliable.
reliable.
Nothing is reliable.
Well, but then okay, but like
But it's the best you got.
I need a better way of explaining this position.
I agree. Well, maybe tradition is better because then you
So
get the
we've spent
collective
about
sense
3 hours on this, and we've come to a few things, I think.
Masturbation, that
One-
you shouldn't do it.
Yeah,
That's
Well,
the
that's
only
true.
conclusion.
that is true.
You probably shouldn't even have other people do it for you.
Then it's not masturbation. Then it's all right. If other
Actually,
people do it for you, it's not
no,
masturbation.
I think having other people do it for you is actually quite fine. But
Anything but shoving it, anything but planting seed in the garden it's supposed to grow in is wrong.
it's not optimal.
Not
Suboptimal. Okay, suboptimal.
I think
I'll
we're
give you
gonna have to
suboptimal.
do another one in like a couple of years and see whether we're still holding that opinion.
Okay. We have agreed that at the very least the Trinity misses a feminine component.
No, okay. Well, I missed that part. Go ahead.
You missed
Just
that
ignore
part?
the Trinity aspects. Ignore them. What next?
Okay. We've agreed that John Vervaeke's non-theism is a bad term.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Talk to his
We've-
marketing department.
We've agreed that relationality and embodiment are integral to human life.
Mm.
Yes.
Okay.
We've agreed that a hierarchy of cognition is necessary.
For everything-
Anything.
No.
Yeah.
That you cannot have egalitarian cognition. There are stupid people out there who must be labeled stupid.
No. Okay. Better way of putting this.
Or-
Some people are better than others.
Some people are better than others, yes.
More gooder.
No, that's a bad joke anyway. It's like, for instance, it's a test to see if someone's left wing or right wing. If you ask someone, are some people better than others? If someone says yes, they're right wing. If they give you a speech, they're left wing.
If they kill you, they agree.
What if they just don't like the bird at all?
Eh,
The
Eh.
bird? What?
The right wing, the left wing. It's a bird that
yeah, I
distracts
mean,
us
just
from.
eat it. It'll be tasty.
There are
Um,
a lot better at different things.
we've agreed that fear of God is the beginning of wisdom.
Okay, yeah. I hope so.
Yeah, not
Um,
100% on that one, but
No, but I mean, hopefully.
what else have we agreed with? That identity is something you cannot have alone.
it's in
Wow,
relationship.
I should have been here a long time ago. You guys are so off the f.
I don't know. Oh, this is even me like, well, what?
So what have we agreed with, Manuel? What have we agreed? You've been here the whole time.
Well, we've agreed that articulating a positive case is really, really hard and probably impossible, because if
If
do
it's
it,
impossible, we're lost. If we cannot articulate a positive case for what we are trying to do and who we are lost. The wokesters win. We might as well just give in.
Well, you're identifying as like anti-woke already.
But that's parasitic on woke. That's satanic. You cannot identify as against something. That's just futile.
I acknowledge your futile endeavors.
So
But,
so you think it's futile to try to resist wokery?
yes, I'm a very. There's this beautiful quote by Buckminster Fuller that goes like, "You do not beat the existing system by anything other than rendering it obsolete." It's not the quote. It's not. That's a horrible paraphrase. But like,
Yeah.
you just render what they're doing is obsolete and irrelevant. You don't fight them.
No, and you don't say no to them either.
Resist not evil.
No, when I say, let's say someone, oh, I don't want to take, but I'll just say no to this, and it's like, great. Everyone else just goes and gets around you, and now you're dead, effectively. So what you mean is, effectively, you be brave in front of it. Is what I'm saying.
But what are
Well-
we being brave for? What are our values? What is our positive vision for life?
Well, you resist evil, right? So if the wokeists are doing something that is intolerable, effectively, according to your morals, then you should find a way to negate the damage, right?
The Bible verse I'm thinking of is Sur Merav Asetov, flee from evil and do good. And I don't think you can flee from evil without having a vision of the good.
Yes. Well, no, I do think you can. No, I disagree. You can flee from evil, but you're just gonna flee to more evil. That's the problem.
So what's the point? How are you fleeing from evil if you are not fleeing to the good?
Well, under your we need to articulate the good.
Yeah.
I will quote Fifth Element and say that time
Please do.
is not important. Only life is important. And wokeism is inherently anti-life.
But life is time. Your life is made up of the time you have. That's all it is.
Yes, but yours isn't important. Life itself is.
And it's made up of the time that people live. Like, again, this goes back to the embodiment, right? We have to talk about life as embodied in human beings. This disembodied concept of life. Sorry about the ambulance going by, but maybe it's very appropriate. This disembodied concept of life just doesn't work. It has to be embodied. It has to be real. It has to be the life of the people like us and the people around us. Like there's no life outside of human beings. No human life, at least.
Sure, but humans are a genetically engineered abomination. Life itself exists outside of humans. There's life of kittens over there. So, I mean, if all the humans die and something better is there, or something more capable of the depth of everything that humans can accomplish, what is it that we sacrifice our own species in service of that life?
But there is no life that is like that cat is gonna die if you die.
Maybe.
That cat will just eat your body if you die.
Yeah, and then die.
I'm gonna
No,
die.
if it escapes,
Everybody's
then it
gonna
can just
die.
eat rats. It'll be fine. Yeah.
Life
That's-
goes on. Life
That's the
finds
thing
a
about a
way.
cat. Why do people even have cats as pets and feed them? It's like they'll just eat rats and mice themselves. They don't need to be fed. Just
life,
joking.
life without intelligence is
Stupid?
yeah, it is stupid. Very much so. You're right. You're absolutely right. And we don't want stupid life. We want smart life.
Yeah, we were talking about love as the thing of the integration, right? So there's an aspect where the smartness is the integration of the ideals or something, right? Like this of the forms.
The embodiment of the ideals. Like going to attend some ritual penis cutting because you're out of time. Is that where you're going to, Jacob? Or was
No,
it
I'm going to a
different?
bat mitzvah, not a bris.
Okay, so you okay, whatever. I don't know the difference. But
Close enough.
Bat mitzvah is a girl's 12th birthday. Bris
when the
is
ground becomes fertile.
basically, yes.
He's going to celebrate life.
Celebrate the life of a woman. Go do.
Yes.
Thanks for letting me come troll you live. I appreciate it. I'll make it for the earlier next time.
Actually,
we need more
you
trolling.
had so your idea. I didn't realize YouTube allowed you to do this, but YouTube allows you to make a public playlist and let people contribute to it, and that's actually one of the things I was thinking about possibly proposing is that this conversation be continued as some sort of playlist and people actually have this conversation, other people, not just involving me.
Also, when he attributes that to me, it's because of the Alien Salience Project playlist, where everybody can add their own 7-minute things about what life is and what it means to be a human, as if you're explaining it to an alien. Go check it out. And I have a patron.
Oh.
Okay. I better go soon. Any last words, people?
I'm just going to blame me being tired on some of my explanations near the end. That's one way of saying it.
I'll say this, Bill. I think you should actually probably look into Neoplatonism in one of its actually embodied forms.
Yes. Yeah. No, I will do. I've been reading actually on some Sufism actually at the moment.
I was about to say you could be our Muslim.
I don't really like Islam that much, to be honest with you. But
all the spokespeople for Al Qaeda are gingers. Have you noticed?
God, they're all Scotsmen. I know. Good God, no, thank you. Oh God, there's a lot of things I really do not like about Islam at all. The short answer was just put it this way: Muhammad, really? That's your prophet? That's really?
Well, the book is a whole lot shorter, so.
Okay, I don't want to get murdered, so let's.
No, but that's just my entire argument. I've not gone any difference. I'm just going, really? That guy? That one?
Manuel or Date or Grim. What are we finishing off with? Give us a smart thought to finish off with.
If you're gonna F the ineffable, F it hard.
Yeah, so I am working on practices and ways of communicating. I actually started a podcast on agapic orientation, which is my YouTube channel, where I I do interviews with people and try to look at something important in our lives and how it changed the way that they're looking at the world. And I recorded one with Grim Gris today, so he'll be up there. So yeah, like I'm looking at different ways to connect the ideas that I have to other people that are accessible, right? And will break their frame, right? Like I think that's the solution. Like it's getting people out into a different way of participating by seducing them.
Seducing them. That's actually a word that's the first time the word has been used in this broadcast. And I actually think it might actually be the one word that actually might really be important here is seduction. Yeah. Ginger, last word.
Produce the future bill that you want to see.
And you'll end up on a $5 bill. Oh.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.